That doesn't happen anymore.
We'll make sure this is...
Welcome to the Select Board meeting for Monday, January 13th. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So this is, I think, our first meeting of the year, so Happy New Year, everyone. We'll begin with a reading of the mail, go to appointments. At 6:40, we'll have a joint meeting with the BPAC. At 7 p.m., we'll have a public hearing about a dangerous or nuisance dog. 7:45, we're going to have a joint meeting with the School and Finance Committee to talk about Shaker Lane update. 8:45, we'll have public input, member updates. 9 o'clock, we'll have select board discussions about the Nagog Hill Orchard, disbanding the Orchard Working Group, talk on the Charter Committee process, and sign a contract for dispatch services for senior transportation. 9:15, we'll do the minutes, and 9:20 promptly, we will adjourn. So we'll start with the mail.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make everyone aware out there that we have current vacancies on our town boards. We've got opportunities on the Agricultural Commission, Conservation Cultural Council, Economic Development Committee, Historical Commission, Master Plan, Implementation Committee, Permanent Municipal Building Committee, Transportation Advisory Council, Zoning Board of Appeals, and appointed by the School Committee, Finance Committee. Also, if you'd like to receive public notifications for the town of Littleton, please register on www.littletonma.org/subscribe. Community impacts, transportation issues, public health concerns, public safety activity, town meeting changes, town events, stay informed. We received notification from the Town of Air Planning Board as a requirement to notification to abutters for a public hearing notice. The Air Planning Board will be conducting a public hearing at 6:15 p.m. on Tuesday, January 14th in the first floor meeting room at Air Town Hall, 1 Main Street, to consider the special permit and stormwater applications submitted by Moulton Construction Corp. And Fox Meadow Realty Group for the Stratton Hill subdivision located off Wright Road, seeking a special permit to allow for construction of 17 two-family homes. Also, the applicant is seeking a stormwater permit for a major project under the stormwater bylaw in relation to land disturbance of an area greater than 4,000 square feet. Now, gift acceptance forms. We have a gift offering from the First Church Unitarian of $484.68 to be gifted to for the work of the Affordable Housing Trust. Thank you. We have, Dirigible Brewing Company in the amount of $781 as a donation to the 2024 Oktoberfest event. Dirigible Brewing is donating a percentage of their earnings from the 2024 Oktoberfest to help the cost of the event for the Parks and Rec. Another one for Parks and Rec, Victoria Bolville and family of $1,000 as a donation to the Holiday Helpers Gift Fund. The intent of this program is to help Littleton families experiencing financial difficulties during the holiday season. Through community donations, we will supply clothing needs and 3 wanted items per child to help lighten the financial burden of the winter holidays. Thank you. And I'm going to save that one for last. And we have from Lisa Montgomery in the Town Administrator's Office, offering gift Taka for $1,000 as a donation going to the Employee Gift Fund. And to Chief Matthew Pinard of the Littleton Police Department, again, Taka for $1,000 donation for community policing. And one thing, we've got a very impressive gift acceptance here, and if I'll would like to name the friends, the name of the party offering the gift of the Friends of the Littleton Council on Aging in the amount of $50,000 to be offered for the new building room naming rights and expended in the new building gift fund. And anybody would like to be recognized, please, come on up.
For $50,000, you get to comment.
I had nothing to do with it.
Of course you do.
Unanimous decision by the board to name this room and fund it. We
Outstanding.
all voted, yeah.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so very much for your generosity. You've worked very, very hard to accumulate that kind of money.
There's no comment.
Okay.
What will the name of the room be?
Well, the Friends Room. Well, basically, not the Friends Room, but a Friends Room. So everybody comes in can be friendly in there.
That's a good idea.
Well, that's wonderful.
Great,
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, sir. Thank you. We would also receive notification from Town Council of Harrington and Heap, from Thomas J. Harrington. It has been a privilege and a pleasure working with the town of Littleton in 2024. We thought the best way to show our appreciation for you would be to make a donation to the Loaves and Fishes Food Pantry. Our best wishes for the season and our fondest hopes for 2025. And Littleton Robotics. The season is back upon us. With the new year comes the start of the 2025 First Robotics Competition season. Team 6328 Mechanical Advantage, a community team based in Littleton, Mass. This is their 9th competition season and currently have 42 students from grades 8 through 12, representing 13 schools from 9 area towns. Here we have the first competition events are free and open to the public, as well as live streamed. So they would like to be able to invite those based in Chelsea to come watch the team in Littleton to compete at the following events: the Granite State District event in Salem, New Hampshire, March 1st and 2nd, and the UNH District event in Durham, New Hampshire, March 22nd and 23rd. And hopefully on to the New England District Championships and the World Championship play. Well, that's very impressive. That'll be it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Moving on, Police Department appointment, appointing Noah Graham as a police officer.
Good stuff.
Good evening. We're bringing in front of you this evening Noah Graham. He's a full-time communication officer for our department. He was hired back in March of 2003, so he's coming up on his 2-year anniversary with us. We're bringing him forward for an appointment to full-time police officer position. He'll be attending the Municipal Police Training Council, Boylston Academy, starting the end of this month, January 21st. So we'll bring him in front. He's also a resident of Littleton and went through the Littleton schools.
Any questions?
Glad to have you.
Okay, you gotta have one question. Last one I asked, what's your favorite color? Blue. Okay.
Good answer.
Good answer.
Adam got that wrong, by the way.
I'm going to ask the drill a little bit. I'm just curious, is this something you wanted to do your whole life? Or is this was it? Okay. Absolutely, yeah. Oh, great. Well, thanks for staying in Littleton, and thanks Deputy Chief and Lieutenant Landry for putting together a team where people want to work too, so, and stay here, so thank you. Thanks for serving.
You picked a great place to work.
Absolutely.
And good luck in school. I know it's not the funnest thing, but we'll see you on the other end of it. It's awesome. Picture.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah. Move that the select board vote to appoint Noah Graham as a full-time police officer with the Littleton Police Department.
Second?
Moved by Matthew, second by Karen. All those in favor?
Aye. We're going to take a picture.
Just tucking a little bit there. Get close. Get close. You're gonna have to get used to it. I'll grab one, right? 1, 2, 3. Oh, I'm on video here. All right, 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Appreciate it. Right, exactly. Text him to him. Congratulations. Yes, definitely. See you soon.
That's the fun stuff. Yeah.
BPAC.
Can you hear me from here? Should I sit?
You can sit down and be clear that way, Mike.
Sure. Say hi, I'm Michael Brewer, Vice Chair of Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. And so I'm here today about speed limits on state-controlled roads within Littleton. So I'll just kind of go over why speed limits even matter, why speed matters, and why I'm here and not somewhere else, like at MassDOT or at some other committee, specifically why I'm at this meeting. So next slide. So why do speed limits matter? Does anybody actually listen to them? That's the question in Massachusetts sometimes, but it turns out there is actually scientific studies that say yes. There was a recent study in Seattle, but where they measured what happened if you just changed the speed limit. There wasn't any infrastructure change, there wasn't any change in enforcement. This was just putting up signs with 25 miles an hour. And there's the full statistics down there, but reduction in crashes, including crashes with injuries, 54% reduction in vehicles traveling 40 or higher, and smaller reductions in regular speed. It doesn't necessarily cover, like, just because there's a 25 mile an hour speed limit sign doesn't mean everyone's going to go 25, but it does mean that traffic is actually going to slow down. So if we go to the next slide. So, okay, why does it matter that speed is slowing down? And this is just a chart of what stopping distances look like. So, and the reason I bring this up is because we'll get to the two proposals at the end, but one of them is Great Road, kind of like when you're going downhill, just past the Toyota and the Dunkin' Donuts there, and then like into the Common. Like, there's a few businesses there, and with the Northern Bank redevelopment, there's going to be a lot of people, and a lot of people trying to cross both sides, as if there's not already people trying to cross now. And so up here you see, well, okay, well, if they're going, depending on how fast someone's going, it's going to take that much distance for them to stop. So if someone comes out unexpectedly, that speed is the difference between them getting hit or not, potentially. This data is also off a little bit because this assumes it's got like the thinking distance, they call it, and braking distance. That implies that someone's paying attention. That is just the amount of time it takes for that signal to go from your eyeballs to your brain and actually start stopping the car. So if you're like texting while driving or something, that person is not going to stop that quickly. Then next slide, just saying, okay, well, why does it matter? Also, the speed you're going, there's some math there, but basically just a little increase in speed means a lot more force. In this case, a difference between hitting someone or something at 25 miles an hour versus 30 miles an hour, that's 44% more force. And all that force goes into the something else or the someone else, so they have to, injuries get much worse in that case. And then the next slide. So here is alluding to the two proposals that we're going to make, which is, or that the Bicycle Pedestrian Committee has made and I'm presenting now. So there you can see, okay, well, there's 25 miles an hour. If there is a collision at that speed, that's showing roughly how many of those would be serious injuries, how many of them would be fatal, and so you can track the speed there and see like, oh, a 5 or 10 mile an hour difference it's pretty significant. So next slide. So just showing like zoomed out map, but there's the state roads, 110 and 119, they're owned and controlled by the Commonwealth, so Mass DOT, and especially west of 495, there's some pretty heavy truck traffic, not so much east. But so there's the local roads, which are mostly under our control. That's mostly, as far as the speed limit is concerned, has mostly been sorted out with the townwide 25 mile per hour speed limit. There's a few areas where something's happened with like a speed study, and so the state has some control there. But there are the state roads where we don't have the final say on that. But we go to the next slide. There's the vulnerable road users laws, a series of laws. And it was all passed around the same time, so I don't know if it counts as one or a bunch. But that went into effect April 1st of 2023. There are a few different things. It kind of created a definition of a vulnerable road user, so either like a pedestrian or someone on a bicycle or a mobility device. Basically anyone who's not in a big steel box. And the relevant part here is that Chapter 90, Section 18, which lists a few different people, but the relevant authority here is the Select Board can petition MassDOT to have the speed limit changed. Specifically, this is a change from how it was before, where a lot of the time it'd be like, oh, they have to do a speed study, and then depending on MassDOT's logic, you might end up with a higher speed limit when you wanted a lower one, just because usually it's what's called the 85% rule, just to go over for the sake of anyone else watching. The gist of it is you just see how fast people are going normally, and you set a speed limit such that 85% of the people are going below that speed limit. The thinking being that people will generally drive at a speed that feels safe. Sometimes when you're not factoring in pedestrians and bicycles, that can actually be a decent speed, but what feels safe and what is actually safe can also not necessarily be the same. But this law, the intent is to allow towns to request that the speed limit be lowered without having to go through all those hoops. They can say no. That's an option, but it at least gives a more clear way to do that. So yes, that's why I'm here. To BPAC voted to make these two recommendations, and then it'll be up to you, the Select Board, to approve, either to make that request or to not. So first proposal, as I mentioned, Great Road from the Common to the Toyota Dunkin' Donuts. There's a stretch that is currently 35 miles per hour, and that goes from just past Robinson Road to that Toyota dealership. And there's the Northern Bank development. I forget exactly, there was talk about the crosswalk going in there. I forget exactly who was doing that. But, so there's a place where we are designating a place for people to cross. Even if there isn't a crosswalk, there's going to be demand for crossing anyway. And there's that crosswalk going from the Toyota to Dunkin' Donuts. And that, I've seen a bunch of times people crossing there, but then you have, the traffic is speeding down the hill where it was 45 miles an hour and it's still only 35. So moving it to 25 would match with the existing speed limit in the Common up to Robinson. Goes with the development. There is, when I was talking with DPW, just to go over these recommendations, and it was just mentioning that the DOT will need to figure out the best way to transition from 45 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour downhill. But I still think it's an important request to make, and would simplify the speed limits there. Then the second proposal is King Street from Air Road to 495. So right now that is 40 miles an hour. It passes in front of a group home, the future town offices at the former Indian Hill Music, the high school, the church, and the cemetery, and the Pondside Apartments. So there's a lot of places where people will be walking and not so much biking because of the truck traffic. I've done it, it's not pleasant, but definitely pedestrians. There's limited sidewalks, so a lot of the time people have to cross over the street just to keep walking. And with all the semi-truck traffic, and even though there's the high school there's no school zone. I don't know if that's just high school kids are considered old enough or it's far enough away, but so we're proposing a reduction in speed, well, asking for a reduction in speed from 40 to 30 miles an hour, just because we're not sure if MassDOT would be okay with dropping it a whole 15 miles an hour. And 30 miles an hour does match with some of the other state roads in, for example, Westburg. There's a lot of those state roads where the speed limit is 30. And they're not too different from King Street over there. This would also tie into DPW. I think they've already started talks about signalizing the on and off ramps at 495 there as well. So it would be an opportunity for MassDOT to just update everything around there at the same time. And then hang on, there was another comment here. Yeah, so that's the presentation. It's not going to be a magical solution, but it is something that we can do. It is, the law has specifically, has been written for us to be able to make this request of MassDOT.
Thank you. Does anyone?
So, does this new law mean that there is no risk that they'll come back and propose a higher speed limit? It's just an up or down vote, right?
That's my understanding, yeah. It's just up or down. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but...
Right. No, that's how I read it as well.
I had a couple questions.
Yeah.
You know, we were looking at the truck exclusion. We had a ton of data we were basing things on. Has there been any study, have we had an increase in accidents, pedestrian or bike in that area as opposed to like other areas of town that you know of?
Not that we're aware of. It's more increased development and Great Road, and there was the issue sometime last year. Yeah, it was last winter when at Pondside Apartments, where the crosswalks were getting really worn out, and there was a school bus stop on the other side of the road. So there were some not actual accidents, but like parents having to stand as body shields to stop cars from actually crossing. So I'm trying to get ahead of it.
There was a bike car accident there last year, I believe. Kind of by Weber Forest area, I believe.
I am intrigued by the idea of the school zone. I mean, Chief, you might know why there isn't a school zone there. I don't know if I've ever been by a school where there wasn't a school zone.
Because it's so far from the road, maybe?
Is that
Distance from the road.
Is that what it is?
Back when they were building the high school, that was discussed. I mean, we fought for a long time to get that traffic light.
Yeah.
But it's not a school zone because of the distance of the road and the age of the students, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Do you have any comments on the proposal?
We're all in favor of slowing traffic down coming into the common, obviously. I believe that's actually a great proposal for it. What Mass DOT is going to see on it, I'm not sure. Like I said, they do their own traffic studies and everything else, so we have to rely on what they provide. even though we've, had our speed trailer out, we had it up by Robinson Road, and, saw not a lot of cars doing 25 miles an hour in that section, so if we can slow them down ahead of time, that's fine, that works with us. King Street going down to 30 in that stretch, I think that might be a harder sell to Mass DOT.
The lights help there. The lights do help slow down traffic through.
But I do believe, concentrate the amount of truck traffic and concentrate on that. Slowing them down would be a plus.
There are 3 crosswalks in that area as well, so. And you take your life in your hands using them.
I don't think, has this board seen, have we seen the design? I hate jumping, the King Street one makes a little bit more sense. The other one, without seeing the design, when that road gets kind of redone, sidewalks put in front of Northern Bank and things like that, I'd like to see what
There's very wide sidewalks in front of Northern Bank, I think they're like...
on the drawings, correct?
Yeah, they're like double wide sidewalks.
But that,
On one side. That will be part of the Northern Bank proposal. When Northern Bank goes in, there's very wide sidewalks in front of the Northern Bank.
the Great Road makes more sense to me because of the addition of all the development and the whole concept of, the form-based code making it walkable.
And the sewer in that area.
Yeah, I would think we would want to slow things down and try to encourage people to park and walk around and encourage businesses to enjoy it rather than feeling like they're at the side of a NASCAR race.
Yeah. I know we kicked around this morning a little bit about, it doesn't sound like DOT does like the 45 to 25 type of transition.
But that's up to them. We're going to propose a change in our town, and they're going to have to figure out where to slow down in advance of that.
Right, but we could have re-looked at that, we could have looked at this, or BPAC could have looked at it when Cooper Farm Development went in, and kind of said, okay, from that point, we go to 35, that starts to slow traffic down, get to that hill, now they're not zipping down, now we can transition a little easier, but,
They can do that now, right?
That's
They
why,
can make that change at the same time.
but if we're not even putting it in a proposal, that won't even probably be, they'll just say no.
But in your presentation, you said that DOT was going to figure out how to go from 45
Yeah,
to
so
25.
DOT can also just say no, but it is up to you, the select board, to make the proposal.
Make the
That's just the
recommendation
recommendation
to
we're
them.
making. But certainly, slowing it down to 35 at Cooper Farms, and that would definitely be an option.
So we should probably, if we go for this, what we should say is we want it to be 25 from Obashan's on. And if there needs to be a 35 zone,
Kick it back to Cooper.
push it back.
Yeah.
All the way back to Sugar Lane.
Oh, God, no. That's a pretty silly area. But,
Yeah, yes.
If I might, you might want to suggest pushing the 35 back beyond the daycare center and use the daycare center as a reason to slow it down prior to.
I think you had mentioned the tubing park earlier today, as a point of reference.
Traffic in and out of there.
So do we need to vote on this tonight? Like, what's the next steps?
I think Michael's looking for, you'd have to make a recommendation to MassDOT. So if the board wanted to proceed accordingly, we could put together a letter.
you draft a letter and then we agree to the letter.
Yes.
I'd like to try to get some information from Northern Bank and Trust, from Planning Board, on what that design is, so that we can kind of put it on.
What the design of the Northern Bank is?
Just that whole, where the, I guess it doesn't matter as far as slowing down traffic, but just so that we know where curb cuts are going to be, where crosswalks are going to be. And,
More information, the better.
Going to be there. Mr. Gallagher's not here. He gave us some information this morning. I spoke to him earlier today, and he said there's other means of mitigating speed, like on Foster Street with fog lanes, and there's other methods.
Well, and he also mentioned that his work with DOT, it's been a 95% going the other way. going from a slower speed to a faster, an increased speed. So it's we want to make sure our ducks are in order with this.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
Our increased development with the MBTA communities and the development of obviously a lot more foot traffic, for sure, on the common. We put all this in the pitch, in the letter, as a recommendation, you know, so. But do we want to see a letter and then make the recommendation?
I mean, I guess that, yeah, I would like to see a letter, but I don't know whether we want to propose a change to the 35 back by Cooper Farm or the daycare, as well as a change to 25 at Acton Toyota Dunks. Because that would at least allow DOT to make the call that it, you know, if they're gonna reject it based on it's too abrupt of a change,
Right.
we would forestall that. It doesn't mean it's gonna make any difference, but, and I'm not sure what the, you know, information about where the entrances and exits for the Northern Bank are. I mean, we're slowing it down in advance of that.
Right.
With the intention of making that zone a little more habitable for people walking or biking, the whole center of town. That's my rationale for pushing on this.
I think if we were going to do something, I'd say to the deputy chief's recommendation of pulling it back to the daycare center.
Sure,
It gives us a little more juice.
I agree. So I would advocate for that, of sending DOT a letter with that as a recommendation.
I would also say that we should do these in serial, right? Make one recommendation and then come with the other one so that they don't get conflated or
Well, we just talk
we
about,
don't get one poison because they didn't like the other one, so on and so forth.
we're doing a comprehensive, BPAC's doing a comprehensive, you know, study this year with all the growth and development in the schools, and those speed limits haven't changed, and we just keep increasing density, and we're about to increase it a lot more. Now's the time to really look at this.
Yeah, no, these two proposals came out of just reviewing all the roads, and
Okay.
they stood out as the two that we wanted to get some movement on.
Great.
So then it's just who's writing this letter? Is BPAC writing the letter, or are we writing the letter? or-
Whichever you prefer.
Well, probably the town administrator's office.
Okay.
Please write a letter.
Can you write?
Yes, sir.
Thank
And
you.
we can have the draft, and then we can vote on if
Sure.
we want to tweak it a little bit, or maybe let you guys even see it to see if it,
Yeah, no, that'd be
Yeah.
great, thanks.
does that work?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One of the most dangerous crosswalks in front of
Okay,
town.
so now we'll move on to the dangerous and nuisance public dog hearing. This is a hearing of the select board held pursuant to General Law, Chapter 140, Section 157, for the purposes of determining whether the dog named Grommet of 94 Cricket Lane is a dangerous dog or a nuisance dog, or in either case to determine the appropriate remedial action to be taken.
He suggested.
Animal Control Officer. ACO.
Okay, so the select board will first hear from Deputy Chief Patterson, followed by the Animal Control Officer, Phyllis Tower. The select board will then hear from anyone who has encountered Grommet and wishes to describe that encounter, followed by Grommet's owner, if they wish to speak or present evidence, after which the select board will take comment or evidence from anyone else in attendance that wishes to speak.
Again, I should have started off earlier with the chief apologizes he couldn't be here this evening for either of these. You received a packet with the letter that was sent to Mr. Tesler about notice of confinement for Grommet, as well as the reports from our animal control officer and the police reports about 3 incidents or so that we've have dealt with Grommet. So what we're going to have is our ACO, Phyllis Tower, come up and go over the investigation and the outcome of that for the beginning of the hearing.
doing?
Hi.
Just want to run down a list of dates and very briefly what happened. The first notification I got was November 26th of 2023, that two children, a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old, were walking their leash dog on the Whitetail Woods Trail, and they had encountered Grommet. Grommet was not leashed at the time, and the boys were trying to get between the dogs so nothing would happen, and the two boys unfortunately were bit and scratched in the legs. November 27th, 2023, I received a notification about a past event after somebody had heard about this. A gentleman stated that earlier in the year, he and his wife and their dog were walking also in Whitetail Woods and had encountered Mr. Tesler and his unleashed dog. When the dog reached the wife, he described that the dog jumped on her in an aggressive manner and scratched her with his paws. He stated Mr. Tesler eventually caught up and did leash the dog. Since that incident, the dog has been seen by this gentleman several times off leash. When he sees the dog up ahead, he turns around and goes the other way. December 15, 2023, I got a call from a woman. She was actually the wife of the person who called about the past, and said that she had encountered Mr. Tesler in the woods with his dog. The dog was on a leash, and her dog was on a leash. She said he had all he could do to hold the dog back, who was trying to come toward her and her dog. The dog has come off the trails that abut her property. The Whitetail Woods is next to her house, and the dog has been out in her yard before without the owner. February 7, 2024, I was notified that a woman was bitten by Mr. Tesler's dog while passing him and Mr. Tesler on the trail. The dog was leashed, but Mr. Tesler was not able to keep the dog from pulling as they passed each other, resulting in a bite to the hand. April 13, 2024, report from a woman who was bit on February 27th, saying that she had come across Grommet off leash on the trail being walked by somebody other than Mr. Tesler. The dog was called back repeatedly but did not respond and jumped on the woman. She was not bitten or scratched. August 28, 2024, a 13-year-old girl was waiting for her bus. Mr. Tesler was walking Grommet on a leash. The girl raised her arms up against her face to protect her face as Grommet was jumping toward her, and the dog did reach her. His paws scratched her arm, breaking the skin and causing bruising by the end of the day. December 1st, a gentleman had encountered Mr. Tesler and Grommet off leash, and a second gentleman, his dog was also unleashed in Whitetail Woods. Grommet came down the trail first and went after the gentleman's dog. He described it as nipping at the dog. There were no injuries. If I could just take some of the reports that people have sent me. I'm not going to read them all. I just want to make a few comments so you can kind of feel how the residents feel, not just that something happened. They state that not under any verbal control, jump in an aggressive manner. Since there's been incidents, they've seen the dog off leash several times and having to leave. They would leave to prevent any further incidents. Grommet has seemed very aggressive, barks and lunges toward people, straining at his leash until the front part of his body is completely off the ground while Mr. Tesler holds him back. Seems like Mr. Tesler has a hard time holding him back. Somebody says, my impression is that Mr. Tesler doesn't interpret the behavior as aggression, but rather that the dog's desire to get closer to people. However, it doesn't feel that way to some of the people who are reporting that. The dog looks powerful and uncontrolled. People try to turn the other way or to step way off the path to allow him to pass by. People try to protect themselves holding up their arms or stepping off the trail. The last incident where the gentleman was not Mr. Tesler, was walking Grommet off leash. They said that the dog was called for repeatedly and did not respond. The dog ran to somebody and jumped on him, not causing injuries. The dog ran ahead, and the gentleman that was walking him did end up being able to grab a hold of him. Somebody said that they had a very unpleasant run-in with a chronically unleashed dog, that his dog was accosted and nipped. This incident did not result in any injuries. He said he had stepped off the trail and that the owner was yards behind, that the owner did catch up and leash the dog. I just have a question. I didn't know if you guys got the pictures of some of the injuries of the children. Did that come to you earlier?
I don't believe so.
Can I hand them and...
Please.
The first two are from the boys, and the last two is from the girl that held her arm up. Unfortunately, my pictures don't show very well, but of the girl, it does show 2 pieces of the skin raised off, and the second picture shows the scratch showed up later more in the day, and she's all bruised, but it's better on my phone than that.
Question. In your experience, is this an unusual series or an outlier as far as the behavior of the dog and the ongoing problems? Have you encountered something like this before?
Yes, but usually things can be corrected sooner. I have had, so animal control and animal inspector are 2 different jobs. I get told about the report as animal control, and then as animal inspector, if there's a break in the skin by tooth or by claw, the dog is quarantined. Other than the last time when Mr. Tesler wasn't available to speak to, I have spoken with him about keeping the dog on the leash, about playing, there was a comment about the dog can't play fetch unless he's out on the trail. I try to make suggestions about knowing somebody with a bigger piece of property that has their permission to throw the stick at, to stay in his own yard to try it. I believe a very early conversation, and I could be incorrect, I think there was talk about further dog training, not my suggestion, but his. I'm sure he can confirm that.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
So now,
Actually, could I ask a question? Do we have any type of protocol? This goes back, we're looking at this going back to November of '23, so a year and a half ago, or year and a few months, where this type of thing probably could have been addressed then. I mean, is there any, when do you decide, or do you wait for a citizen to decide to file the...
I tried to work with the resident, which I did from the very first incident, suggestions. If the dog was kept on a leash, that would have prevented a few of these. Sometimes the dog was on a leash. There's different collars that can be suggested to keep the dog from pulling. We talked about some different things. He said he used to go to a dog park that was fenced in. That would give the dog a place to run around.
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to tell him what to do.
Right.
I'm just supposed to enforce what the bylaws are. But we talked about it and we made some suggestions and he came up with some as well.
Thanks, Mark.
anyone else? Okay, so now we'll move on to anyone who wishes to speak. So don't sit down yet. I have to swear you in.
Yes.
Your name, please?
Abigail Luciano.
Okay. So repeat. I, Abigail Luciano,
I, Abigail Luciano,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that the testimony I am about to give
that the testimony I am about to give
is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Excellent, thank you. I am Abigail Luciano. I live at 19 Cricket Lane here in Littleton. Mark and his dog Gromit are my neighbors. On the morning of February 7th, 2024, I went out for a walk. When I approached the trailhead of the Whitetail Way Trail, Mark was there with Gromit on a leash, ready to exit the trail. I am not a dog person, and I've always been especially leery of Gromit because he would often strain toward me against his leash and bark and growl. This felt to me like signs of aggression. Mark seemed to believe that the more Gromit saw me and was near me, the less he would show these aggressive signs. So that morning, instead of exiting the trail when I approached, Mark pulled aside and told me to walk past him and Gromit. I trusted that he knew his dog better than I did and started to walk past on the trail. Gromit lunged at me and bit the side of my hand. Mark immediately pulled him back and yelled at him, clearly surprised that he had bitten me. He asked if the bite had broken the skin, and I told him that it had and I needed to go home. I walked to my house, then drove myself to the emergency room at Neshoba Valley Medical Center. There, they cleaned the wound, gave me a tetanus shot, and prescribed a round of antibiotics. The doctor said that because the mouths of dogs are so dirty, he recommended I leave the wound open for 3 days to allow some bacteria to come to the surface and escape before stitching it closed. On Saturday, I returned to see that same doctor at the emergency room, and he stitched the bite. The healing process took about a month. The incident was 11 months ago, and I still don't have all of the feeling back in the side of my hand and the edge of my pinky finger. It's likely this numbness is permanent nerve damage. May I submit pictures? Would you like me to hold them up or just hand them over? Thank you. In April, 2 months after Gromit bit me, I was walking in Whitetail Woods. Gromit was on the trail, off leash, and when he saw me, he charged toward me and jumped on me. He was not with Mark, someone else was walking him that day. Although Gromit did not bite me that second time, it was still a pretty disconcerting experience, and that was the last time I walked in Whitetail Woods. It just doesn't feel safe. I reported the bite to the police and to Animal Control, and let Animal Control know about Gromit jumping on me in April, but it seems as though not much has been done. I hate to be here today. I don't want to attack anyone. I've always considered Mark a good neighbor and a decent person, so I'm baffled as to why, knowing what his dog is capable of, he has not seemed motivated to make sure Gromit will not be allowed to hurt others. I am hoping that, as this problem has not been tackled yet, someone in authority from the town will be able to assist in solving it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Your name?
My name is Laura Paler.
Or, okay. I, Laura Paler,
Laura Paler.
do solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear
that the testimony I am about to give
that the testimony I'm about to give
is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
So I don't have any statements prepared like Abby did, just off the cuff. But
Can you
I'm the
state
mom.
your address, please?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm at 12 Cricket Lane.
Thank you.
So I'm the mom of Ruby Willis, who was the 13-year-old girl that I think when Phyllis had mentioned it, she said scratched, but it was actually bitten. She was bitten when she was making her way to the bus stop back at the end of August. And like Abby, I consider Mark a neighbor, very friendly. He and his wife are very, very welcoming. And so when Gromit bit Ruby, I felt bad about reporting it, but I know that it's something that in Massachusetts you're required to do. He had broken the skin, and after that, the bruise did develop more, and I realized how much of a chomp he had gotten out of her, and the motion that she had made when she was bit was to cover her face, but I didn't realize at the time that there were at least 3 other people that had been bitten by Gromit before my daughter. And I would like to think that a good neighbor would have, having had that happen, muzzled their dog from that point on. I'm a dog owner, and my dog, I will admit, is a pain in the neck, and I'm very aware of that. And I will do everything I can to prevent him from annoying others. So I would hope that would be reciprocated to me and mine. I also have 3 other children. Ruby has a twin sister, and she has a 6-year-old brother and a 2-year-old brother. And there are a number of just little kids on our street. And with the strength that Grommet has and the history of aggression, I do have a fear that, like, what if that wasn't Ruby, who's a pretty strong kid and who likes dogs, but if it had been my 6-year-old or my 2-year-old, not only could they have been more seriously injured, but they could also be terrified of dogs for the rest of their lives. And I don't want to have that kind of fear. I want my kids to feel comfortable riding their bikes down our road. And, I think that I wish that going back when that first bite had happened, that they would have just proactively muzzled the dog, because I really do truly think that would have prevented what had happened. Both my daughters are afraid of Grommet, the first dog they've ever been afraid of. And, it's just, I don't think it should have gone this far.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question for the animal control officer. You mentioned that there's a quarantine protocol if the skin is broken.
Correct.
Did that happen after this incident with Ruby?
Yes.
And how long was the dog quarantined?
It's, state rule is 10 days.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
In my defense?
Hold on.
Hi, Sarah Belcher.
Are you,
Yeah, James Belcher.
okay. So repeat after me. I, Sarah and James Belcher,
Hi, Sarah.
James Belcher.
do solemnly swear that the testimony
Do solemnly swear that the testimony
I am about to give
I am about to give
about to give
is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you. Your address, please.
14 Whitetail Way.
Thank you.
We just wanted to follow up. Phyllis had mentioned our phone calls and our incidents. I have come across Grommet in the woods pretty much since he was a puppy. And when he was a tiny little puppy, he did want to play. He did want to, run around, and he did appear friendly. We have a dog as well. We have a 100-pound lab. As the years went on, this dog just got bigger and stronger and more aggressive. And I've had incidents where the dog has chased me and my dog onto our property, like in through off the main trail. I cut through the woods to my property and it's chased me. The incident that Phyllis reported, Grommet jumped on me, and this dog is big, and when it jumped on me, it jumped up here and scratched down the entire side of my body. And as a dog owner, you apologize and you ask the person if they're okay. That's just what I would do as a decent human being. And there was no apology, there was no acknowledgement of it, and every single time I have encountered Mark and Grommet in the woods, it has been, my dog just wants to play. My dog just, he just has a lot of energy. Well, jumping on me, jumping on my dog, chasing my dog when we've been on leash, the dog, he doesn't have voice control over the dog. He doesn't, and people have said if this dog had been muzzled, maybe there wouldn't have been these other incidents. I would argue that a muzzle isn't going to even solve the problem, because if he was muzzled and leashed, there is not even control then. He's jumped on people's cars because there was a period of time that he was loose from his yard running the streets. He jumped on a friend of mine's, their vehicle. The dog, again, we're dog owners, we love animals. I hate to have to be here and have to say this, but we have a 15-year-old and an almost 13-year-old, and we will not let them walk our dog unless we are there.
We won't even let them go in the woods by themselves.
Yeah, even if they don't have the dog. They're not allowed to go in Whitetail Woods with friends or by themselves, because we are fearful of what would happen, because our neighbors up the street, their boys were bitten by the dog. It just, as this other mom said, kids shouldn't be afraid to be in their own neighborhood, because of a dog.
Everything, I agree with everything she said, and I just would like to add that I think this is just a horrible situation that we had to wait this long to have this conversation. People have been bitten multiple times, and we were one of the first people, I think, that reported this. And we knew when that first instance happened, that this dog was aggressive. And I don't know how much it weighs, but it has to weigh close to 120, 130, 40 pounds. It is 95 pounds. It's 95 pounds?
Wow. It's
Okay.
a lean dog. It's a big. It's a big dog. I mean, up against our lab.
Lots of fur.
There's no, it
Anyhow,
doesn't, yeah.
it's a large dog, and it's just
aggressive.
something that we really would like to have taken care of so that we can feel safe in the town that we've lived in for a long time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Tesler? You have to be sworn in as well. So I, Mark Tesler,
I, Mark Tesler,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that the testimony I'm about to give
that the testimony I'm about to give
is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
Comment. Surprised nothing's been done. This testimony today, made it sound like I've done nothing to prevent this. Many of the incidents were a year and a half ago or more. My dog was still a puppy. He is getting better. I stopped playing fetch with him in the woods there because he would occasionally take off. Yes, he's very difficult to hold when he starts that pulling and tugging thing. I do not let him off in Whitetail Woods without a leash, with the exception of occasionally I run into folks who do not mind that Gromit plays with their dogs, and I let the dogs run and play. But he doesn't take off when he's engaged with another dog. I was rather surprised at this December 1st complaint, which made it sound like Gromit ran up and was jumping at and nipping at another dog. I did not lose visual contact with the dog that day. He did return as soon as I called him, and he did not jump on anyone else's dog. I was a little surprised that when I asked the animal control officer to speak with the witness, she essentially refused to do so. I don't know why she didn't interview him. He can corroborate my story that I did not lose control of Gromit, and Gromit did not jump on any other dogs or any persons that day. That being said, I've gone through a series of harnesses for Gromit. I think I have one now that finally I have much better control of him. He's calming down. I have him wearing a muzzle, and I'm working with Gemini Dog to train him. So, this all seems to be brought up as to how you're going to manage this thing a little late after I've gotten things under much better control. I don't know what else I can say. I don't know what you intend to do, that besides having him wear a muzzle. I'd like to apologize to Abby. I had no idea that he had jumped on her again. When did that occur?
April, during April vacation.
April of
April of last year.
April of last year.
2 months after he did.
Okay, someone had taken my dog for a walk for me. I had had back surgery and was incapable of walking a dog, barely able to sit up, no less. So I was not aware that that had occurred. It's the first I've heard of it. And again, I apologize. I had no idea. What do you suggest I do that's different from what I'm now doing?
It's up to us.
Okay, so what would you have me do that I'm not already doing?
We will be discussing that momentarily, so. Do you have
any questions?
Does anyone have?
I have one. You just referenced, why didn't the animal control officer question the witness that you spoke?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
let me finish. It's incumbent upon you to do that. I mean, if that person were in fact going to testify that you did have the dog under control, that kind of thing, then I would ask that you pull that witness forward and let them actually make that statement.
I did ask him to come here tonight, and evidently he got called out for service call. Unable to make it. I do have a written statement from him, if you'd like to read it.
If you have the written statement, you can read it in.
They were coming to us, so.
It's here someplace.
Does anyone else have questions or?
How old is Gromit now?
It's almost 4.
So a year and a half ago, he was 2.5?
Well, yeah, it was about 2. What incident was a year and a half ago?
I think that's what we have when this all started, about a year. The first
14 months.
14 months would have been the first incident that we have that's been presented to us.
But less than a year ago, someone was bitten on the hand pretty badly.
In August and then in December.
That was the circumstances there. I had indeed, and other times that I've met Abby in the woods, and she obviously doesn't feel very comfortable with dogs. I had control of him on dry land. You know, he could bark, but I just wanted her to be able to walk past and hold on to him. Back in February, I was standing, the entrance to Whitetail Woods at that point is maybe 3 feet wide. The trail is very narrow, and that area floods. It flooded and froze. I was standing on a sheet of ice and having difficulty just walking with Gromit on that, no less having him, try to pull towards someone else. And it happened rather quickly. Abby came to walk past. Before I could tell her I really don't have control of Gromit because I'm on the ice. I had nothing to hold on to balance myself. And he lunged, and I think a good deal of the damage was less the bite than that I had yanked him back at the time. So that should not have happened. It surprised me. It was the first person that he had bitten. He does play very aggressively, and I am working at controlling that.
But you didn't control it. It's incumbent upon you to control that dog. If there's ice on the path, if you're neck deep in quicksand, your dog shouldn't be biting someone. And that pictures of that bite, that's not like a play bite. That's an aggressive... No, excuse me. Like, I understand when dogs start nipping at you, even correcting you, when you're not doing what they want. If they're telling you no, they might, puncture the skin in a little bit. That was an enormous bite that required multiple stitches. That was an aggressive bite. And saying, well, I had to pull him back and that's why the bite is so bad to me, is not an acceptable explanation for someone getting hurt that badly.
As I said, I was surprised he'd never done that to anyone that way before.
Except for all the times in the year prior to that when he bit the two boys, or jumped and bit the young woman at the bus stop.
Well, the Ruby at the bus stop was after Abby.
Okay.
So I would question too, why would you bring him so close to children at the bus stop with that history?
She was not yet at the bus stop.
No.
She was, oh, please. Are you going to let me speak?
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
She was walking past my driveway. This occurred in front of my driveway. She wasn't yet at the bus stop. And I stopped to say hello. And again, that was something, he lunged, and that very much took me by surprise that he would bite when he did that.
So twice he surprised you by biting someone?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay? In the meanwhile, I've changed what I do. I have a different harness for him. I have him, I'm working with the folks at Gemini. What more can I do?
Do you have the harness with you?
The harness with me?
Yes.
No, I don't have the dog with me either.
Do you have any documentation from Gemini?
Excuse me?
Do you have any documentation from Gemini?
I may have a receipt if I have access.
Mr. Tesler, so you...
I don't think I have documentation with me.
I just feel like that would have been something, if I were in your shoes, I would have brought whatever I could if I felt as though my dog needed to be defended.
I was actually expecting someone from Gemini to be here today, but that didn't happen.
No, I'm just, it strikes me that each individual that came up, agree, you're a good neighbor. Otherwise, that's why this is difficult, and you're having trouble controlling. From what I've heard, it seems like a 100-pound, close to 100-pound excitable dog. So, to you might not seem aggressive, but to someone else that doesn't particularly like dogs, doesn't know dogs, or just anyone that's trying to enjoy a walk in the woods or anywhere, it's a problem for. And this isn't a dog that's going out stalking people to attack them. I will give you that. That this is a 100-pound excitable dog that can claw, break skin, get excited, bite. When you pull away, it causes a bigger... I can see this is just a disaster that's waiting to happen, a more serious incident. What do you say to others fear not being able to enjoy a public space because of your dog? That has to be concerning to you to some degree.
Of course it is.
So Gemini dogs certainly can help control a dog, an excitable dog, and teach them commands, stop on a command and things like that.
Teach the trainer, teach the owner.
Sure. So I would definitely, part of anything that we discussed today, and I don't know how far we can, we haven't discussed really the remedy side of this, and I don't know if you were aware of the significance that this can lead all the way up to putting the dog down.
I'm aware of that.
Okay.
You should also be aware that I recently became aware of a, what they call it, Facebook page, where basically they're soliciting anyone who's had a problem with the dog and ask them to come here tonight. But no one who has no trouble with my dog, no one who likes to, let their dogs run and play with my dog, was solicited to come here. So we'll call this, this witness pool is somewhat prejudiced.
Well, it's prejudiced. It's prejudiced because they've been assaulted or injured by the dog in some way. So even if you brought people forward and saying the dog plays with my dog, they have a great time, that's great. That's normal dog behavior. But what we're here to discuss is something that the dog is not being effectively controlled all the time, or is able to be trained, hasn't been trained properly to obey commands. So we're not talking about it. To me, it's not the dog's fault. This is your fault, Mr. Tesler. The dog you've lost some control of the dog, even if you believe it's playful behavior or excitable behavior. You've lost control of the dog where it's interfering with others' ability to even go outside to some degree. I mean, we're hearing testimony that they don't want to let their children out to walk in the woods because that dog might be out there to knock them down, and that could cause a serious injury. These are your neighbors.
Yeah, I'm aware they're my neighbors. And I also see the way my dog plays with my 15-month-old grandson while he's pulling his tail and jumping over the dog, and he's fine with kids.
But
Not just mine.
if there are 99 people who testified that it was a great dog, who they loved to have come over and play, and there was one person who came in and said, "This dog bit me," we would still be having this conversation. It's, you having the dog in the woods is a privilege, not a right. And
Okay, what precipitated tonight's meeting?
a report from, I don't recall exactly, a report from somebody who said,
Requested a dangerous dog.
Grommet has bitten me, and this has been going on for a long time. Can the select board please do something about it?
Not the police report that was filed December 1st?
That was a result of some of, I don't remember which of us, the board members, residents got in contact with us and asked us to do something about it because they felt that it wasn't being addressed.
And that was precipitated by a post on Facebook?
No, it had nothing to do with,
So this is a dangerous dog hearing, so someone can come, right?
When did people start coming to you?
A month ago.
A month ago, after December 1st.
I don't recall, but
This
yeah.
is the result of a post on Facebook.
You can think that, that's not the case.
So-
Those hearings,
Nope.
those Facebook posts did come about.
But we can
That was
talk about the
happening.
Facebook posts, even if they came about.
Right.
It's just, a lot of people don't even realize that they can request a dangerous dog hearing. So maybe people just,
The request from a dangerous dog hearing came from Phyllis Tower.
okay,
Is that correct?
I'm not sure. I
Did you
don't,
put, did you
I don't want to get into
Does it
Does it matter,
Speak
sir?
directly to
Why
residents.
why does it matter where it came from? We have documentation that the dog has bit several people and assaulted others and assaulted other animals, and that you can't control it. It doesn't matter how we started this. That evidence is pretty clear in my mind, from the testimony that's been given today. So where it came from is completely immaterial, and I don't want to discuss it. It doesn't matter where we heard about it.
I mean, they're credible witnesses. And if a Facebook post stirred up people to say, that dog did that to me too, that's good that
Are you
happened.
telling me that the person who filed the complaint on December 1st was a credible witness?
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. We have the police officer, we have the animal control officer, and we have multiple other people in the neighborhood who have given us evidence, including pictures of bites they sustained, and you have not said, that's not my dog, that's not Grommet, he didn't bite them. The evidence is that Grommet is a dangerous dog. Where this started is completely immaterial to this conversation.
We could have been having this same conversation a year ago, after Abigail was bitten and had stitches. If it would have come to our attention then, we could have been having the same conversation then. It has nothing to do with the Facebook.
I can give you an example. We've had a dangerous dog hearing in the last 6 months or so. Friendliest dog in the world. One incident, walking that dog, attacked another dog, ripped it open, dog had to have surgery. That was a dangerous dog hearing for that dog, and we had to take necessary action. So it can be a one incident thing.
And what action did you take for that dog?
It's irrelevant.
It's irrelevant. It really is. We're looking at this.
We struggled, we had to sit here and struggle whether the dog is dangerous enough to be put down because it can do that to another animal. So there's several things in Mass General Law that we're allowed to do and we're allowed to discuss.
If I may, I'd like to get us back to what's being done for the dog now. So you said the dog is at Gemini training, and what sort of training is he getting, and how often, and how is he progressing in your point of view?
Okay, it's actually more me that's getting the training. Okay? And then I have to train him to just react In a nutshell, it's what's called operant conditioning for those of you who've taken psychology courses. But basically, I got to train him to stay calm in a situation where he normally gets very excited. And this takes time. During the course of every day, he gets reinforced for proper behavior, and he doesn't get reinforced for, getting excited and lunging. And he learns what I want from him. And it takes time.
And is he being trained on this harness that you say is working well for you now? Is that part of the training?
The harness itself isn't part of the training. The harness is to just control him when he's out of control. And I do not let him off. I don't play fetch with him anymore. I stopped doing that. He goes out, there's a fenced yard that with another dog, he runs out, he plays there.
And you mentioned a muzzle
He wears a muzzle now.
at all times?
Well,
I mean, outside
when I'm
of your
walking
property.
Yeah,
Yeah.
off of my property.
Thank you.
Do you have a fenced yard? Or
Say again?
do you have a fenced yard?
No.
Or you're saying, oh, your neighbor, someone else?
Yeah, it's another thing. Not in Littleton.
Are there any further questions? Any further comments? Okay, so now we can determine whether we want to close the hearing or not. Once we close the hearing, it's only us that can speak, and there will be no more input or anything from the audience. I'm not even sure we're allowed to do that, but yeah. So, are we ready to?
Yeah.
What are we going to?
Unless someone else wants to speak, I think we are ready.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, I'm Dustin Neal, 17 Lakeshore
I
Drive.
have to swear you in if you're, yeah. Can you raise your arm?
Okay.
Wasn't sure. I, Dustin Neal,
I, Dustin Neal,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that the testimony I'm about to give
that the testimony I'm about to give
is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thanks. I'm here tonight speaking for the first time as the president of Littleton Conservation Trust. As the owner of Whitetail Woods property, LCT was saddened to hear of these regrettable instances, particularly the one on December 1st, which was the first we became aware of the issue. We support all visitors, those with and without dogs, to be able to hike all trails in town safely and without fear. LCT, including myself, collaborated with the Conservation Commission to help write, introduce, and support the current version of Littleton's leash law. I believe it was at spring meeting in 2020, for spring town meeting of 2020. Further, had this owner complied with that bylaw, with his dog leashed and under control, which is a component of that law, it would have been sufficient to prevent these incidents, and that in our view, the responsibility here lies primarily with the owner's failure to comply and abide by that law, even after they knew the dog was a problem. We support the Select Board's right to mitigate this issue within the state's nuisance dog statutes, but that at a minimum, we feel grommet is not welcome on any Littleton Conservation Trust property and should be excluded from all conservation trails in town as well as public spaces. Finally, if the current leash law enforcement isn't more uniformly supported and enforced when it is necessary because of incidents like we've seen, the Conservation Trust would need to advocate for a stricter 100% leash all the time leash law, which we know is not really what the town wants after years of public input for that. We know that wouldn't be popular, but we'd have no choice. Thank you.
Just a clarifying question. Are you saying that the LCT is banning grommet from all LCT lands, or that you are supporting us in doing that?
Both. I intend to deliver a message in writing to the owner, if necessary, after the outcome of this hearing, to inform him that grommet is not welcome on Littleton Conservation Trust properties. And the reason that we supported the leash law the way that it is because there's a lot of benefit to having one consistent law enforced on all of the conservation lands in town. We don't want to do something different for LCT properties because there's a mix of different property owners on different conservation lands, and it would be unfortunate if we had to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. As an aside, I did talk to town council, and our leash law is a little dated compared to what other bylaws are for different towns, and we may be looking to update that.
We welcome that as well.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I respond to what you just said? In terms of that complaint from December 1st, you said my dog was not under control. He came back as soon as I called him. He was called back as soon as we saw someone coming the other direction. The leash law permits us to let the dogs run off leash unless we come within 25 feet of another person or dog. Well, as soon as we saw that there was someone else there, I called Gromit back. He did not hesitate. He turned, he came right back. I picked up his leash. I continued walking, and Gromit never approached. He didn't attack. He really didn't care about that other person that day. He was playing with another dog. And I had the other dog's owner was a witness to this thing. That was a lie. And that was intentionally set forth to the complaint to the police because, what's his name, Colson? Mr. Colson didn't like my response to him because he's telling me the dog must be on a leash and yelling at me. I held up the leash with my dog attached to that leash and said, "Oh, please." And that ticked him off. So he filed the report to get even with me because he didn't like my attitude. And you should understand that is what happened.
I've made no comment about the dog being pulled back under recall. The law requires the dog to be under control, and I'll let Mr. Tessler's testimony stand on its own. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else?
I move that we close the public hearing.
Second?
Moved by Matthews, seconded by Karen. Voice vote, Karen?
Aye.
Chuck? Gary?
Aye.
Matthew?
Yes.
Marcus and I. So the hearing is closed. So now we get to decide what we're going to do about this. We can find that Gromit is dangerous, we can find him as a nuisance, or we can dismiss the complaint.
I don't believe we can dismiss the complaint. I'm leaning towards dangerous. I don't think I could ever order that a dog be euthanized, but I would consider significant restrictions on Gromit until Mr. Tessler could demonstrate that he had complete control of the animal. And I don't think a muzzle is sufficient, because if a dog that size jumps on a young child, there could be serious damage, and from the testimony I'm hearing, Gromit jumps on people a lot. And that is another indication that the Gromit is not under control.
Okay. Anyone else?
I tend to agree with everything Matthew said. There's basically seven actions, if you will, that we can impose. Up to 7 actions. One being euthanization, and maybe I guess one more to do nothing, or to dismiss it. So I guess we need to determine what action we feel is appropriate for a dangerous dog, for this dangerous dog. If we're agreeing with that, consensus that Gromit is a dangerous dog.
Nuisance dog is an excessive barking or other disturbance, a source of annoyance, causing damage or other interference by excessive barking, such that a reasonable person would find such behavior disruptive to one's quiet and peaceful enjoyment, or has threatened or attacked livestock, a domestic animal, or a person, but such threat or attack was not a grossly disproportionate reaction under all the circumstances. I don't believe that Gromit qualifies. I think that Gromit is beyond nuisance and into dangerous, in my opinion.
So do we concur on the dangerous part?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think this has reached the level based, I mean, when you have video, picture evidence of breaking of skin, and as I read the dangerous dog description, it hits a lot of these bullets.
So I think we're in agreement that the dog is a dangerous dog. And now we can go into the remedies that we wish to impose. So we can say that the dog can be restrained, confined to the premises of the dog's owner, that when removed from the premises, the dog shall be securely and humanely muzzled and restrained, that the dog owner has to require insurance, that the owner of the dog provide to the licensing authority or animal control officer information by which the dog may be identified through its,
Is Grommet microchipped? Is Grommet intact or neutered?
He's intact.
Well,
so that's the other thing, is we can also order them to be neutered, right?
Yeah.
I guess, I mean, it doesn't say anything about forcing an owner to have the dog properly trained as a part of the remedy, correct?
That's correct.
So, to me, an excitable dog that is trained to listen to one-word commands or commands to halt or stop it's hugely beneficial in an excitable dog, especially like this. But obviously, that's.
So I think we can say that the dog has to be confined, and then if he provides, Mr. Tesler provides evidence of the proper training to the satisfaction of the animal control officer or others, then we can alter our order, right?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
I think there's got to be something that, I agree with that is, the owner needs to be accountable for. And frankly, I didn't hear any contrition. I heard the word sorry, but many of the comments made me question the sincerity of the apology, frankly. And I think the owner needs to be, I think Gary said it earlier, it's the owner of the training, not necessarily the dog. Many of us are dog owners. I feel as though if my dog were to do something, I'd want to make it right. And, I'd be contrite, and I'd try to do whatever I could to make sure that those that were hurt were made whole, or at least felt a sincere apology and whatever it took to heal them. For two little girls to, sorry, my embrace not smoking. For two little girls who have a dog to be afraid of a dog it's a shame. And I think that if we can impose something not just on the dog, obviously anything that we impose on the dog has to be implemented by the owner, but I'd like to make sure that there is some component where the owner is responsible for coming back to us and checking in, I guess, or
Well,
they're made accountable.
It doesn't have to be a life sentence, right?
Right.
I mean, this is one of those things that if we're restricting the dog to the owner's property, that's one of the things that I'd like to have the owner back here if the dog is proven to be a graduate of some dog training program, and
the dog and owner.
dog and the owner, and, whether it's Gemini Dog, who does good work, for sure, can come here and testify to that, because they don't do it freely. If they can demonstrate and explain through video or pictures that the dog is trained to listen to commands, which would make the dog less dangerous to others. And I just can't get over the part of, others cannot enjoy a public space because of a dog. And that's right there across the line for me. So that's where we're at, unfortunately.
So it sounds like we're more or less agreeing that the dog will be confined to the owner's property. So, do we want to require insurance?
I think that's wise.
I think so.
Okay.
Unless
Can you be brought to the fence in the yard where you can run around?
So here's what I suggest. I'm struggling with this because I understand that, like, confining Gromit is going to put a burden on Mr. Tesler. However, on the balance, given all of the negative stuff that's happened outside, I think that I want him to take responsibility. So I would suggest that Gromit is not allowed on any public property in Littleton. So we can't say anything about private property. Gromit can go to the other house and run around all he wants. But Gromit can't be in any public property in Littleton until and unless, we can be, you can demonstrate to us that you have complete control over the animal in a real situation in the woods with another dog or a person approaching.
With a veterinary or professional certification.
Yeah, like I think professional certification.
Testifying to that effect.
I think that would be sufficient for me. I'm agnostic about the insurance, but I won't fight it.
Yeah. What was the insurance, and if we restricted it to the property?
So it says to the owner or keeper of the dog provide proof of insurance in an amount not less than $100,000, insuring the owner or keeper against any claim, loss, damage, or injury to other persons, domestic animals, or property.
It's belt and suspenders to me.
Okay.
I mean, it's protecting the owner to some extent from a civil suit.
So I'm fine with.
Okay.
So the one little tricky part is the road is a private road. So what exactly counts as public in that case?
No right of way. I mean, there's public right of way on the road. I think we can define that as, it's in his property or another private property in town.
Or not in town.
What?
We can only govern within our four walls, but.
Okay.
So if the confinement is enclosed or locked pen or dog run upon the premises of the owner or keeper, if he goes from his house into a car to the neighbor's house, who is outside of Littleton apparently, then that would be consistent with a confinement order.
Yeah.
We don't have to get fancy with it.
Nope.
Or anyone else's private property in Littleton, for that matter.
Okay.
Okay. So you want to make a motion to effectively?
Do we need a motion? Ryan, do you want a motion or do you just?
Sorry, one more thing.
Oh, yeah.
When he's removed from the premises, do we want to have a muzzling order?
Yes.
I do.
I mean, obviously, when he's at Gemini, that won't be in play, right? But
if he's going to the vet, for example, either we think he has control of the dog or we don't. And if we think he doesn't have control of the dog, then we need to be prepared for circumstances of what we're ordering. In which case, I would like for the dog to be muzzled.
Okay. So Ryan, do you need a motion, or do you
I think
just?
it would be helpful, at least, because first you're declaring the dog a dangerous dog, and then the components for which that you would be, what remedies specifically.
So I move that we find Gromit to be a dangerous dog, and that we order that he be confined to the owner's property or other private property in Littleton, that he be muzzled when he is not on the owner's property, that the owner carry insurance such as specified in the remedies section of the dangerous dog.
Subsection 4.
Yep. And that we will revisit these remedies if the owner can demonstrate that he has control over Grommet.
Proper training and certification.
Yeah, or evidence from a professional dog trainer, or, I'm not sure how to say that. Demonstration, or, yeah.
Documentation.
Yeah, probably documentation,
Okay.
right? So you'd want something, formally from presumably Gemini saying
Yeah.
that the dog has been trained
Yeah.
accordingly.
Okay.
You also
Gemini and
mentioned,
the animal control officer. Sure.
you also mentioned public property too. Would you want to add that?
We can say, Grommet is not allowed on any public property in Littleton. Or publicly accessible property in Littleton, because LCT isn't public officially, but, so that's the motion.
Second?
Moved by Matthew, second by Gary. All those in favor, Karen?
Aye.
Chuck?
George goes aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Matthew?
Aye.
Mark's an aye.
So this all gets written up?
This all gets written up and will be delivered. Yeah.
Any questions for Mr. Tesler?
Any further questions, Mr. Tesler?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. Ryan. So it's
Moving on.
4, 5.
Finance and School Committee.
Good times.
What was Ryan?
He's a good neighbor, we like him, our family.
Sorry about that.
I don't want to shoot.
Oh, shit.
I don't want to share. Are you in session? We're in session. School committee, are you in session?
We have 3, so call the school committee meeting to order, 8:11.
So we're having a joint meeting with the school committee and finance committee to discuss Shaker Lane. So who's driving?
Do you want to talk generalities where we are, Kelly, with the project?
Come on up.
There's a microphone there, so we'll have them sit on that.
Yeah.
Everybody?
Hello, doctor.
Where are we now with the process? We submitted the PSR. And there's an FAS proposal, which is a facility study proposal that we are presenting to MSBA on the 29th, I believe. After that presentation, we'll meet with MSBA again on February 25th. They'll give us feedback and hopefully approve our FSA, and we would move on to the design phase of the project. The project then would undergo some design, so we'd have a detailed design of a new building. And the cost estimates would obviously become more accurate as the plans were developed. And then we would intend on going to the fall town meeting and asking for a vote of the public to approve the new Shaker Lane build for whatever the dollar amount is. What we're hoping to do in the process is obviously work closely with FinCom and the Select Board to come up with a plan to ensure that we do everything we can to keep that increase in taxation levels as low as possible. We know there's going to be a cost, but there are things that we can do as we work together to come up with the best cost estimate that we can. From our end as a building committee, we need to make sure that the prices are as fair as possible. The space that we're asking for is just the space that we need and no extra, and ensure that it meets the educational needs of our students for the next 50-plus years. I used a few acronyms. If you'd like me to clarify them, please ask. Stacy, do you have anything to add? Or?
I think you've got it all. I think it's obviously going to be a collaborative project that we all have to work together on and be really proactive with. So any type of proactive planning we can get done so that we can get this pushed through with the vote and obviously have it be a financially viable solution for the town is what we're all going to really have to work together on, because this is going to be the biggest project Littleton sees. So it's good that we're all getting together now.
Can I ask, when would, you talked about the fall town meeting, but when would the ballot vote, when would that work? Because we need both.
Yes.
After town meeting.
With this, November.
Like
The fall town meeting, right?
Right, but what I'm saying is, would it be right after town meeting, or just wait until the next election?
Right after town meeting.
Okay.
It's either the weekend after, like if town meeting's on a Tuesday or Wednesday and Saturday, there's a vote on Saturday.
It's whenever the select board schedules it.
Well.
Yeah. I had my budget meeting with the clerk today, and she has it in her budget for 2 elections for next year, so she's prepared. That was a perfect lead-in, Kelly and Stacy. Thank you for the slides I'm going to show. At the last town meeting, when we had the Shaker Lane presentation, I stood up and talked about the impact on very conservative numbers, what that would be, and we talked about the project itself and how everything was still an estimate. The project right now, nothing has changed. The project is still an estimated cost. The reimbursements from MSBA is still estimated. We'll know more after their board meeting that comes up. I think part of that discussion is the reimbursement rate that they've been talking about. But until the design is done, we really are still talking about an estimated project. And it's those same estimates that I talked about at town meeting that we're using and we'll use tonight. Some of you were guinea pigs. A couple members of the Select Board and FinCom were guinea pigs in this presentation a couple of months ago, and I came up with it. So you're going to hear the same things, and I apologize for being repetitive. But it's important enough to go through.
Just before you do that, the estimates, when we hit town, we'll still have estimates at town meeting, right? Because we don't have it bid out at town meeting, so.
At the fall town meeting, we will have a cost.
There will be
a budget that we have to approve because the funding has to be approved.
When you're locked into your 10% overage if that's built in.
But it's not something that we have, it's still an estimate that.
You won't have bids in hand.
We don't have bids.
I don't believe we'll have bids in hand.
Thank you.
I don't believe so. Do you know any differently, Kelly?
No, I don't.
Okay.
But we'll be in like 85-90% design.
Yes.
Yeah, if I may, it's a good point, because right now, conceptually, we're really basing it on a per square footage cost. So it's really just based on very general terms. So the next phase that Kelly was mentioning gets into better sense about what the actual MSBA reimbursement rate will be and what exactly it'll cover. Specifically, we're interested in pre-K and trying to move that needle. So once we have that and get into design, then we really are going to be getting into the brass tacks of the whole thing, and will give us a much stronger figure and sense of what the cost will be for town meeting.
Having been through this process twice with estimates, I know how accurate the estimates end up being even when you go to bid, so.
So the estimates or going, is there a situation where if this got pushed out 6 months more, we would be in a better position for, I'm just trying to...
We'd probably fall off MSBA's schedule.
That's what I'm trying to see. That's driving.
Yes.
Okay.
This is all based on their schedule.
Okay.
MSBA is pretty specific about the schedule that we follow, so if we don't adhere to it, we could lose our place.
And then it's years until we get another spot.
Well, there's no set time, but if you put yourself in their shoes, there are many districts that applied for funding for a new school, and if a district turns it down, I wouldn't imagine that we would hear back from them if we applied again for at least 7, 8, 10 years. There are people knocking down the door at MSBA all the time for new schools. If you look at any state, including the state of Massachusetts, we have a lot of old schools. And we're thrilled that they identified Shaker Lane as a school that, needed to be renovated or renovation addition or a new school. There's some stringent criteria that has to be met in order for that to happen. So for me as a superintendent, that was a real signal that we definitely do need, in this case, a new school, which we've voted for.
If this is approved, though, with just estimates without having the actual budget, is there a possibility that the MSBA, after the actual budget comes in, their participation would change based on those numbers?
My understanding, Jerry, is once we ask, say to MSBA, our project costs X, and they agree to that project, anything over that amount would be 100% on the town. And then we would have to go back to town meeting, ask for another vote, and we certainly want to avoid that, so.
Or change the design to fit inside the budget.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you.
This slide just talks that we're still dealing with estimates as far as construction and MSBA. We're looking 30-35% estimated range for MSBA for reimbursement. We really don't know what that number is going to be. Again, these numbers are going to change. When we talk, we'll have a good number by the time we get to town meeting, and as the design process moves forward this year, we'll know the MSBA reimbursement on that. But the other factors that are involved, such as, and we'll talk a lot about property values and things, that's still fluid, that's going to change, and we're still using estimates for those things. So we're doing right now the best we can, based on historical data we have, to move forward and talk about those things. There's property values. We'll talk about property values in a second. The initial estimates that we did, at the time of town meeting, we had still 3 designs on the table. So we gave a range for those 3 designs. First year, worst year, was $1,475 to $1,850, and we used FY24 values. The average house was $672,000 at that point. Debt service, we were conservative in our approach as far as what debt we were going to place. It was a 20-year bond, constant principal payment. Property values, again, were from FY24. On the day of town meeting, we were We got our 25 values approved by the state, so we didn't update those numbers for town meeting. We were still using FY '24, and we were using the single tax rate again. So we were very conservative in our approach as we made that initial presentation. So now, things have changed a little. We've narrowed the school to option 3.1, new construction on the upper field. This example that we're running through is CM at risk, which adds around 6% to the project in non-reimbursable costs. Total project cost is $104 million. Estimate from MSBA is $29 million. Net cost of the town is $74.7. 20-year bond. We use a 6% coupon rate at that point in time. What a country. Assumptions so we presented 1 year at town meeting. So we want to look what's the impact in future years too. So assumptions that we made based on some of the historical data that we have, 3.8% increase in residential land, 322 on commercial, and depreciation on personal property of almost 15%. Since that time, the assessor gave us updated new growth numbers, including new growth for FY '28, which was not there. It's a very conservative approach, again, in her new growth numbers. She always has. This is what we base our budgets on, though. What we found with this impact, and again, it's the level of new growth that we're going to be seeing from 550 is not included in here. There was maybe a little piece in FY '28 that she included, but we'll talk about more of that when we get to the property values and the impacts that we've seen through this process. It's not as great as we would think it would be, the impact. So this is what we went to town meeting with. That top line for the worst case, we said 1850 at town meeting, it's 1842.62. Again, conservative approach, we're placing a $74.7 million bond. FY '25 values, we take what we just did and we update it to 25. You can see the 1842 only turned to 1819, so we saved $20 in that first year from increasing property values. So that surprised me when I looked at this. I thought it would be a little bit more. But we're increasing property values and we're increasing the average home by the same percentage, so really nothing changes. It's all going up the same. The only impact would be new growth. So the level of new growth that we see in any year, and those estimates that Kathy did, only turned the needle $20 in that 1 year, and we had very good new growth last year. So if we can move forward. In December, this is the timeline that we're using on the committee right now. I just cut and pasted the last piece of it. Construction's right now is complete in November of '28, so we've moved into the new building at the start of the school year. The demolition of the existing building is done in November. The fields are all set. Project closeout right now is February, so we've gotten all the bills in, we've gotten our reimbursements in from MSBA. There's usually an audit at the end before they sign off and everything. So given this timeline, this new timeline of February of '29, when it's complete, I would say that we wouldn't place the bond until March or April of '29, which means our first payment that I was talking about happening in '29, even at the last meeting that we had, would move to 30. So we get an extra year of trying to change this scenario somehow. If we update this to FY30 values, and you can see what I'm talking about is the impact as far as property values go, we're only down to $1,800 now. So it's another $20, and we've added our assumptions of property values going up to FY30 now from FY25. So it's not changing anything. So how can we change that scenario? How can we bring it down from $1,800 first year? First year is the worst year, of course. We placed a bond in October. You guys should remember you signed the bond notes. It was a $344 net interest cost with a $420 average coupon. The reason there's a differential in rates there is we receive a premium because the investor wants to be able to sell the bond with a 4.25 coupon and not a 3% coupon. Okay? So we receive a coupon, and if we interpolate what we received there to this project of this size bond, we should be receiving somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 million premium payment. Premium payment pays down the principal, so we don't have to borrow as much. So our $74.7 million bond now becomes a $69.7 million bond. Based on those costs, 344 and 420, I reduced the coupon from 6% to 5%. Was hesitant to go any lower than 5%. Long-term rates are going up instead of down, even though the Fed is decreasing short-term rates. 10-year Treasury is at its highest in a year and a half and still going up. I checked the muni rates. That 344 coupon that we got in October right now would be 360 for a 20-year bond. If it was a 30-year bond, it would be 390. So if we're going to look at this same borrowing example for a 30-year bond instead, I would say the average coupon should be more in the 5.5% range, which adds cost. Go back 1 second, Ryan. We have a split tax rate. We used the factor that you voted for this current fiscal year, that 0.8922, and carried it forward for most of the years. Changed it slightly in the end years. Okay. So now if we look at this, we can see that the second to last column, that estimated tax impact, that's the single rate. By reducing the size of the bond by that $5 million, we got the $1,800 down to $1,527. And on a split tax rate, we're now down to, I can't read that, 13?
$1,362.92.
Okay. Still, it's better than 18, but it's still pretty damn high. Last year, in the budget year, we added a school building stabilization account and put $1.1 million in it. If we were to continue that, and now we have an extra fiscal year to put money aside before we place this bond, we could have $4,180,000 with a minimum of $1 million per year set aside before we place the bond. We could take that $4,180,000 and apply it to construction and reduce the size of the bond yet again. So our $74 million bond now turns to a $65 million bond. Okay? We'd still go on after that FY29 period, and that $1 million would continue and go into the debt exclusion stabilization account. And we would handle that to pay down the excluded debt, essentially bringing some of that project inside the levy instead of 100% outside the levy. Second to last column again, we bring the single tax rate down to $1,200 and the split tax rate to just over $1,000. First year, worst year. We look at the 10-year impact, $9,200 or $9,300. It still averages $931 per year over 10 years. There is cost in years 11 to 20, We just didn't calculate that. So that's kind of like option one. Reduce the size of the bond by the amount of money that we can put aside between now and when we place the bond. So we reduce the size of the bond. Second option I looked at was any money we put aside, instead of putting into the building stabilization fund, we put it directly to the debt exclusion stabilization fund and save up our money and pay down the debt service as it comes along as best we can. Then we go back up to a $69 million bond because we're not reducing it by that $4 million. And we can come out to a split tax rate of $896 first year, worst year. $854 on average for the first 10 years. So it decreases pretty dramatically once we get into 6 to 10 and beyond that. I personally, even though, go back, Ryan, even though this has less of an impact that it's calculated in that first year for the taxpayer, I would lean more toward option 5, in reducing the total bond size. Because if you look at the total payment on this is 106.3, and the other one was 100, just about 100 even. So with a $4 million investment, we're saving $6 million to the taxpayer over the life of the bond. I just don't like the interest cost.
But at the cost of what over the next 4 years? That's the thing.
Well, both of them have the same costs.
So that's what we need to discuss. To get from option 4, example 4, which is what we submitted to MSBA, that $1,500, single tax rate, 13 on the split rate. That's what we submitted, because we had to do an impact statement. We did mention that we have some alternatives as far as that debt exclusion stabilization, have to bring that down. So for this budget session that we're going into, we don't actually need to commit to anything right now, but we should be committing by the time we're done with our capital plan and we get free cash and we dissect that, how we're going to handle this. And a commitment from the boards that this is going to be able to be sustained as best we can into the future. And to sustain it into the future is going to, number one, we need to control budgets. I say that every year, but we really need to control budgets, head count, operating expenses. We need to hold the line on that type of thing. Capital, we have a lot of capital items coming due. Jim and Ryan sat down with me and talked over their plans for free cash for this year. We have a fire engine this year, fire engine next year, 3 school roofs in successive years after that, and a DPW building sometime in the future. Their plan right now, and I agree with, is use existing capital stabilization money that we have set aside. That's 3.6 million or so, maybe a little bit more, to pay for the fire engine this year. There's enough in free cash to fund our capital plan for this year. There's enough in the estimate right now to put $3 million into capital stabilization.
We have one, there would be another 1.6, so yes, it'll be 3 into the cap status. And the balance would be after that, yes.
And 1.6 million into this account. So we're already $600,000 ahead. With the balance of, $3 million going in, we'll be sitting on enough cash in cap stab to take care of the next year's fire engine, and generate free cash again to fund the rest of the capital plan. The school roofs, we need to go to MSBA, get partial funding, no matter what it is, to help offset some of that cost. I'm thinking right now that we could probably do that, say it's a 60-40 split. We could maybe handle those roofs in cap stable. We're not going to be able to handle a DPW building, not at the estimate that I heard. There's no way, out of capital stabilization, so that would be dead. It's doable, but it's belt tightening, not only on the town side, but on the school side too.
Steve, if I could, this reminds me, and I'm just seeing this now, but this reminds me a little bit of the scenario we had when we were doing the high school. And depending on who's writing the narrative, because different narratives have been applied to that, but one narrative is that we didn't borrow from the high school by putting it all on the back of the operating budget and basically sacrificing the operating budget for the capital. And I'm just nervous that, you know, that's what's going to happen again. And I'm a little surprised to hear that we've got $3 million here, $1.6 million here, we're fine with capital, and we can do another.
So new growth this year is higher than it had been in previous years. It's because of what happened with the assessors' funds that we took, $4 million out of the account that they have. We took that last year. That somehow affected.
So that's a one-time thing?
That's a one-time thing, and Michelle has warned us that the level of free cash this year is not going to be what it is moving forward. That's why it's going to take some belt tightening on our part. It's not going to go away. We continue to generate free cash at good levels.
Right.
However, we have an opportunity this year with probably the biggest free cash position we've had in quite a while to put some money away and put it aside for the projects that we need to have.
Right, and I think that's obviously a great idea, but for years we've been, I feel like there's been so many capital requests that we push out and we push out and we push out, and I feel like we've got a lot of, you know, deferred stuff that ends up being more expensive when we end up actually doing it. And so part of the, I mean, I absolutely hear your message, you know, really ride herd on the operating budget and also really ride herd on the capital budget, but I feel like we've already been riding herd on the capital budget. We've deferred so much. I feel like we're accumulating, in my field we call it technical debt, but I mean, you know, deferred maintenance debt, and taking a strategy that will cause us to do even more of that makes me nervous. I mean, you have always been able to...
Maybe we should be nervous.
Okay.
I'm nervous.
Okay.
This is a big project, but at $1,800 to the taxpayer, this goes down in flames.
Yes.
Would everybody agree?
Agreed, yeah. I think that was...
It's a lot more palatable at $800 and something dollars.
Under 100 a month.
Well, no, even, okay. Well, okay, 92, it's 1,000, yeah.
But that number, if we go with Ryan and Jim's recommendation, putting $1.6 million into this account, that number has already gone down by $600,000 worth of dollars.
So what happens?
Plus interest.
What happens when we need the new DPW building? That.
You're fighting the same battle then, another battle just like...
I mean, do we have to basically go through the same exercise and come up with another $400,000 out of the operating budget to put into the debt stabilization to make the... And, I mean, there's only so much belt tightening we can do. Right?
First of all, we need to figure out whether that building, I don't want to say what estimate I heard, but I'm sure you guys heard the same thing. And that's just absurd.
I'm sure I haven't heard an estimate, but I'm sure it's absurd.
No, it's absurd.
But it doesn't, I mean, it doesn't even matter how absurd it is. We know at any number, there's no way we're funding it without taking money from somewhere. And what's,
You're big on planning. I totally agree, 100%. We need to plan. So let's figure out when realistically that's going to hit. And then figure out whether it's going to be inside, outside, how much we have. Because if it's inside, it hits the operating budget.
well, if it's inside, you're not doing, funding the debt exclusion fund.
Well, and you're also talking about, you're almost talking about a personnel freeze. So you got nothing there. You have no more you can take from the operation.
This, besides free cash, this doesn't hit the operating budget rate. Not a dime. It affects the capital budget.
Yeah.
Doesn't touch the operating budget.
But, well,
But
not
the
yet.
operating, but not spending every dime that's available to us, letting it fall to free cash, helps this situation. So it's control of the operating budget.
Well, the DPW, I was kind of reaching out to the DPW scenario. That does affect, that will affect.
Right. And then in the future, we do have extra revenues.
True.
550 will come on board, even though there's talk of a TIF for that. We have other improvements that are going on in town. We have the new growth in that scenario helps those things, because that hits the levy, inside the levy, and helps the operating budget.
Rick, but I think to Gary's point, if I can speak for you, it's, you know, any employees we add, you know, that indirectly, maybe 2 years down the road, that impacts, you know, free cash and all that. And I just, it's funny, I know part of our job is to be risk managers, and I just look at, this, I look at, you know, we're certainly counting on 550, we're certainly counting on the sewer eventually not being the drain.
$1.8 million this year.
We're hoping the world economy survives the next 2 years, but, you know, to your point, it's like in 20 years, I mean, we're spending $100 million on one building. What is it? You know, we think in 20 years, another one of our buildings isn't going to need, you know, isn't going to need major work. I mean, the high school's halfway through its life. The police station's not the new station anymore. None of our buildings are new. I don't know.
Have we ever built a building that cost as much as the annual budget of the town before? Like, it seems like an unprecedented scale of expenditure to me.
It is.
And is that just because of prices have gone up? It's not that we're asking for something irrational for Shaker?
I didn't think so.
No. When we looked at various schools around the state, we've done cost comparisons. What we're asking for is really what we need to be able to actualize our education plan. We're not asking for a lot of different things. And some of the additional square footage of the new school would be a result of MSBA requirements. For example, the size of the gymnasium. Our gymnasium at Shaker Lane is very small. And in order to meet the MSBA requirements, we would have to have a bigger gymnasium. So there's some of that's going on that's responsible for the increase in school size. We've brought back a number of special education programs in our district where we used to send students out of district. We firmly believe that we want to educate the children in this community in our schools if we could provide a great program for them. That certainly has saved the town money and us money as well. But when you bring programs back that you've never had before, you require more square footage. These are special education programs. You require more clinical staff, etc. The Shaker Lane School did us well for many years, but it doesn't provide the square footage that we need to continue to offer 21st century programming to our students. I mean, our staff and administration do an incredible job of making it work, but our students, some of them are being serviced in closets, in hallways.
I don't
That's
think
where
anyone
they're-
here is questioning we don't need.
No, but
this.
somebody asked me.
No doubt we need.
The question, does, is this what we really need? I'm just responding to that. We're very cognizant of the fact that this is a huge price tag, and we're committed to do everything we can to minimize that cost without sacrificing the educational program.
I mean, that's the thing, if we realize that that building has outlasted its useful life for us, education.
Sure has.
Then I think it's incumbent upon us to do whatever we can to minimize this effect to the taxpayer, because it's not going to pass at these numbers.
Right.
It's a huge number. And the cost, we haven't really sat down and talked about this as a committee, but if this fails, the cost of what we need to do to remediate that building, plus portable classrooms for whatever, I mean, there's a cost involved in not doing this.
Well,
By the time we decide we don't like that and we get back to MSBA, it's reapplying, sitting on their waiting list, just like we did this last time.
Right.
And costs are just going to go up even further.
Now you're 5 years down the road.
I mean, I think there's a real risk, not just from the monthly, the annual cost of the increase, but looking at the price tag and the perception of it being unreasonable for the school or the administration, the town, to ask for that much money. I think people are going to see sticker shock, and they're not going to even look far enough to see the monthly cost. I think this is fantastic. Like, you almost cut it in half.
Yeah.
And I think that $800-ish is a lot more palatable. But I think it's the 100 million that people are going to get stuck on.
We had some sessions down at Shaker Lane, and people come in, sat down, questions and answers. I don't know how many people that came up to me and says, we built the high school for $20 million. Well, that was 25 years ago. People still think that's a new school. It's not.
Right, but I think that then informs people's, if we convince people of that, then I think a reasonable person would say, well, the next time we have to do a major reno on, the middle school, or Russell Street, is that also going to be 100 million? Because costs are what they are, we need to do 21st century education, and, our quantum of buildings used to be 20 million. If our quantum of building any building is now 100 million, I mean, how many buildings do we have? And it's I mean, I still go back to the study committee, that presentation that happened when it happened, we were given the six options and then the 3 options, which are all essentially the same price. So it stretches my definition of the word option. And then we sat here and said, well, could we do this? No, it's too late to change. Could we do that? No, it's too late to change. Could we combine some of the schools? No, it's too late to change. I don't know. Just not pleased with. I'm not pleased with how this has been handled from the get-go.
I would say that you may not be pleased with the process up to this point, but this is where the process is today. So you either are going to buy into the town needs to replace it, and this is the option, or you're just going to vote against it, and that's that. And I'm not saying either way is in. Have your opinions.
Right.
We're going to vote as a board to either support the project or not. And we would like both boards to be unanimous in their decision and try and limit the impact of the taxpayer. If there's any vocal opponents to this, there should be, but this goes down in flames no matter, even if we give $800 and say this is the thing. If we're not all in agreement, this school's not going to be built. That's my opinion.
In terms of the middle school and high school, I mean, we're talking about very different entities. The middle school and high school are up to code. The middle school and high school is part of the design requirement. The district had to show in the town where we would do an addition. So I think we're talking about very different things. One of the challenges with Shaker Lane School is we can't do a lot to it without triggering code deficiencies. And once we trigger code deficiencies, it's going to cost us a lot of money. So we're limited in terms of what we can do to I can't even use the word renovate, partially upgrade certain areas. And that's part of the challenge. You know, when you look at a school that was built in 1959, the first section.
And if I can speak to the cost of just renovating that building, it ended up being between, I think, like 80 and 90 million. We're at 104 for a completely new building that provides for all of the needs of the school, including the growth of the town. So yes, that's a big difference, but if you think about renovating a building that was built in 1959 with some additions, the amount of money to renovate that, like renovating anything, is so costly that it's just less expensive for the town to have a new building, get the other building wiped out, and we have to take that cost. We have to take that hit. Shaker Lane has provided decades of education for the kids, and we just need this new building with the new way that education's going, with the growth of this town. And I think to speak to, I very much understand that the process may not be as smooth as we all want, but the very big variable that we have here is that the MSBA is really dictating our timeline. So we could collaborate for months and months and years and come up with the very best plan, but their timeline for this has been so tight.
Very tight.
So that is, I think, a lot of the reason why steps have been taken to go at this process at a rapid pace, albeit, of course, we all would like to have an input on that, but that's why we are at where we are now with the decisions that we've made with the building committee. So.
I mean, there have been many times where I would have liked more time, but they dictate the timeline, and we have to adhere to it. And
Right. I'll just say, though, that we've been talking about Shaker for at least 2 years, and for the longest time it was, oh my God, it might be as much as, 30 million. And then the study committee went off, and then FinCom, I'll say, got blindsided with a 2-day notice, and, the price is so much higher. And I get you, Steve, that's, maybe it's just sour grapes, but it's like, man, that's not...
Described to you before, Brian, you had 2 days' notice between that, when you heard about the meeting and the meeting. We got the cost the day before that. So...
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So what do you need? What do you want? You're as blindsided as I was when I was shocked. I was not expecting a $100 million building. I think everybody was shocked.
It wasn't 30.
Yeah.
We would 60 was in the realm.
People freaked out at that. So anyway.
I mean, these are always difficult. We're, a fire station, a police station affects, it's easier to pitch. A, they're not as pricey because much smaller building, but whenever you're trying to talk, when you talk schools, and you're talking to a population that so many people aren't going to get the value, so to speak, out of that school, because who has K1 through 2 kids? A very small part of the population has that. So it's so hard to sell. I agree with you. For our boards, we need to have a strong message for sure, because it's so easy to lose an enormous amount of voters because it doesn't...
The middle school failed the first time.
I know. And a lot of people, I think Littleton historically does understand the value of, having a strong education system and strong schools.
I mean, the concept of public education, since its inception, was the concept of paying it forward. I remember vividly when I bought my first house, interest rates or mortgages were 16%. And I was scraping to buy a house. And I remember sitting down with my dad and said to him, I'm barely making ends meet here, and yet my taxes are going up. 5-6% a year where we were living. And he just looked at me and said, it's the cost of being an adult, and it's the cost of supporting your community. And I get it. I mean, it's, in order to thrive and compete, a community has to invest in itself and invest in the future, and that's tough. But if you don't, I mean, one thing about where we live in terms of geographic component of it, we're surrounded by a number of great communities and a number of great school systems. So our survival really depends on continuing to move forward as a community and making sure that we're attracting people to move to the community. And fortunately, that takes money, taking vision and great planning. And Littleton has done a great job of that. I mean, look at what Littleton's done in the past 20 years. There are some communities that haven't been able to do that.
And I'll just say, don't take my critique is all finance. I mean,
I agree.
my mom was the dean at Tufts. My first picture book was the Iliad and the Odyssey picture book. So, as sort of nerded out as it can get, it's just trying to make this.
Explains
Explains a lot. There you go. Okay, I handed that to you.
I had Dr. Seuss and Bugs Bunny.
So,
That's awesome.
I agree we need to all be rowing in the same direction. We're trying to tighten the budget on this thing, right? I think to turn it back to the school and the school building committee, they have to also tighten the budget on this thing and see what they can do to pull that $105 million number down to in the 90s, right? I know you have an educational plan, and I know I'm not questioning I did the Shaker Lane tour, not questioning whether we need a new school or not. I question whether we need the school you're proposing. It's enormous compared to the rest of our schools for the number of, I mean, it's the second largest school we have, right? It's much larger than middle school or Russell Street. So you're going to have to justify the square footage or bring the square footage down to help bring those costs down. I mean, I think there's a huge difference between if you're asking for a $95 million school versus $105 million or even a 99. You can't cross that. You're crossing that barrier that people are just going to say, this is too much. And we need to figure out how to pull that down. And if you just look at like Steve's estimate for where he applied the $5 million difference, that dropped the tax bill almost $500, right, or $400, right? So if you pull that number in, $5 million, we're going to automatically be saving that money. So it's not just on the finance, how we're funding it side that we have to do it. We also have to do it on the cost side. So.
Now, totally agree. I'll go back to something I've raised before, and maybe I'm just told and I didn't really hear the answer, but my understanding is that the new design, or the current design, basically increases the number of seats that we can handle by 10%. And this is a 50-year building. Do we think that school population in 50 years is only going to grow 10%?
Well, that's MSBA, that's not.
What?
That's not Littleton saying that.
That's MSBA.
That's MSBA.
Saying that.
That we wanted to say it's 20% because we don't know what the IBM property is going to do, so why can't we get some estimated population into that? It was 10%.
Okay, but so my concern then is that we're doing the biggest construction project we've ever done to add, let me just preface it. When I say just add 10% seats, I get it. We're taking people out of closets and stuff like that. So stipulate, I'm with you there. But just in terms of the number of students, we're doing the biggest construction project the town's ever done to add 10% students when we might end up having a whole lot more. And
I think that's where the room for growth comes in, right? It's 10% with room for growth.
Right.
Which is what we have at the high school and the middle school.
Right.
That room for growth that Shaker Lane doesn't have, which is why I think the Shaker Lane building is unique in its impact, right? We're going from not enough space to needing enough space, plus space for 10% growth, plus we've got to create add-on space that doesn't exist right now. When we when we look at our next couple of buildings, we're not going to be faced with that stacked deck.
And the growth was determined with the demographics of this community over a 10-year period, looking at building permits that were already taking place, and some of an awareness by MSBA. I'm going to be cautious when I say this because they can only go on fact, not what may happen. So having said that, I was pleased personally that they're adding 1 classroom per grade, because that, that perhaps is the case in some circumstances. They did recognize that our community has the opportunity to grow. I mean, we all know, if you go online and read an article, that population of students entering college and entering schools is on a decline, not only in Massachusetts, throughout the entire nation. So the competition for students, public school students, is increasing every year. So for MSBA to simply say, well, with the IBM project, you're going to have 30% growth wouldn't fly. I mean, they couldn't do that. They couldn't possibly do that.
I also don't think the IBM project is going to cause that much growth. There's so many, most of those are one-bedroom apartments, a large percentage of those units. So I don't, it's being falsely thrown out there as something that's going to cause issues that I don't believe that it's going to cause. I could be wrong.
And let's talk about 550 for a second. We really don't know the timeline. We really don't know if it's going to wind up there, what the value of that parcel is going to be. It's all an unknown right now. There'll be something there. And when that revenue stream does come in as new growth, we just need to be smart and not spend every single nickel of that new growth, because that could be a big impact to the levy, right? So you're able to isolate some of that. The hotel that's talked about, you're able to isolate that revenue stream, sales tax. If you want to start taking that money and saying, that's what we're going to use, we can do that. We just need to plan to do that. Come up with a plan that's going to have the least impact to the operations of the town and still allow us to fund our capital. So from what I'm hearing, and I think by the time we get to, say, February 1st, that's Saturday, and we talk about capital, we should have something that takes our 10-year capital plan, makes estimates as far as what new growth is going to be, not new growth, what free cash is going to be, overlays our capital stabilization plan. What can we fund? What can we not fund? What do we see on the pike after 3 roofs and 2 engines? There's still stuff there. Right? We need to all be sure that we're not sacrificing those types of things to this. Because if the town votes and says, yes, we want a new school and we're willing to take this, we could just go like this and say, okay, taxpayer, you're on your own. I don't want to do that. I don't think anybody at this table wants to do that. So if it's not to this level, it should be to some level without causing us pain. That's all.
So I apologize if this is in the budget book you gave. I haven't read the whole thing yet.
Shame.
Did you get any kind of report back from the new facilities director as far as an overall, game plan of what needs to be addressed so that we know what other unanticipated, capital or repair projects are?
So Jerry, we did, the facilities person's still relatively new, but
Yeah.
we really tried to take a good look at the general condition of our buildings. I think that there really wasn't anything wildly pressing that came out of that. I think there are some things that we have to work toward. There's an open question about what we're going to be doing with Town Hall and where we're going to be. So you could take that out of the mix potentially in a 5 to 10 year window or less maybe. Then that kind of changes the dynamic in terms of what those questions are. But if you look at some of the other facilities, our high school's about 20 years. We have a capital plan to replace a roof and a boiler there. The new HVAC system that's in, or this replacement of some components of the HVAC system at the middle school, that's in our capital plan. But in terms of other things that we're looking at, I don't want to say everything's perfect. It's not. But I think at this point, taking a good look at that, I think Fred raised the same point, that there's nothing pressing when we look at the capital plan that we would radically change what's there. Now again, with another year, of the time that Eric's here, I'm still every year looking at that and determining whether or not you thought that system that might last for another 5 years is only going to last maybe another year. So things like that you try to make those assets last as long as you can, and the systems that's involved. But right now, we feel good about that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Steve, is 20 years the longest we would look for a repayment plan on the building? Your assumption is to use 20 years. Is there an option that drags the payment out and costs us more in the end, but lessens the burden to the taxpayer on the monthly or the quarterly payment due?
So I did run the 30-year. Like I said, the coupon will be a little higher, so I used 5.5. For 20 years, we're paying at a $69.7 million loan. So just the bare bones here, number 5 on the estimate chart. Total payments over 20 years is $106 million. For 30 years, it's $129 million.
I know, but no one's paying the 120 individually, right? They're concerned about what their individual tax bill is.
Right. So you hear what I'm saying about not wanting to pay interest. I mean, that's better than me, and I'm an ex-banker too, and I still don't want to pay interest costs. The payment differential in the first year, worst year, is only $800,000 total. It's not that much, but you're not paying. The reason why it's so big is your principal payments aren't as much each year, so you're paying more in interest costs, but your total payment's not changing that much. So $800,000 probably is like a $40 differential on that.
So in this
it's
case,
something.
It would be the difference between 106 and 105 on the...
Yeah.
Oh, no, it would be the difference between 6.9 and 6.1 for the first year.
600.
Like, I'm trying to figure out the 800,000.
Oh, that's the first year payment?
800,000.
$6,156,000.
Okay, so that's about more than 10% of the total, though.
Yeah.
So wouldn't that take like, $90 off the average payment?
800, so
It would take $90 off the average contribution for a year, because that's about a 10% less.
it decreases over time.
Sure, understood, yeah.
By the time we get out, and I know it's a long ways out, but we get down to FY '44, which is year 15, the differential is $100,000.
Got it.
By the time we get to year 19, we're paying more on the 30-year than we would pay on the 20. And when the 20-year goes away, right, you're still paying $26 million in payments from years 21 through 30. I don't think it's worth it, and we can certainly go through the exercise and come up with numbers here, but
For $40, I would agree, it's probably not worth it.
well, $22 extra million
One
in
question.
interest costs to save, $40, $50 first year.
Well, you can get
I don't
a
think
loan
that's
off the books in 20 years, and now you get another school that's going to need to be built.
Exactly. So just
Definitely.
good example. So if we had, 30-year bonds issued for the police station, middle school, and
Right.
Russell Street, we'd still have 13 years left of that instead of the 3. So we'd be doubling.
And bond council limits what you can do to those buildings while they're still there.
Absolutely. Yes.
communities that start doing 30-year, you can almost look at them and say they're in desperate, they're starting to get into desperate straits, and you start doing 30 years.
I think so. And you talk about handicapping in the future. That handicaps you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm still freaking out, you said FY 44th.
Well, you know, it goes to...
I'll be long gone.
If we as a group say, this is what we intend to do, we're gonna put, $1 million, we're committing to this. We're not gonna be around this table, maybe even when this bond is placed in FY '30. So I'm thinking we need to memorialize this somehow, in some kind of policy that says, this is our best practice, this is what we're striving for.
Yeah.
And future boards better have good reason to vary off of this type of thing.
Absolutely, totally agree.
Financial policy group can meet again next year.
So do we have existing debt on the books that's getting ready to roll off, and did I just hear 3 years or 7 years? Or?
So we have exclusion items rolling off in the next 3 years. Police station, Russell Street Middle School.
And the way that I understand the exclusion item is that if that were to be paid, our effective tax bill goes down, because we're no longer making that payment, right?
And we've been using this strategy of taking inside levy money and paying down that debt service probably the past 10 years in our debt exclusion account.
Once that debt exclusion is repaid, the town doesn't have the ability to
use that money for it. No,
because we don't collect it, right?
We collected.
We were collecting it for the single purpose of that building that's on there, so.
So if our debt service
Is there a
first
way
year
to-
is $6,900,000, we're collecting $6,900,000 and paying that debt service for it.
How, that's the total for
That's first year debt service, yeah, $6,900,000.
right now?
No, for
So
the.
what is the debt service we're collecting now that's going to?
That's $900,000.
Okay. And is that somehow
next 3
factored
years.
into any of these slides of the presentation that all of
This
us
is, this is just the extra you would be paying on top of your existing tax bill that's, would be increasing over this time.
I think my question is though, if we're looking to sell this bond in '29, and that's when this tax bill starts, did folks then realize a tax decrease because we'll have some buildings paid for?
But the decrease will be like $150 a year.
Is it reflected in the information?
No.
Okay, so there's $150. But we're all gonna have to find a way to make this palatable for the audience, and I just wanna make sure that that's reflected in the numbers as we present this. Because I agree with you, at 1,800, it might have all the bells and whistles, but no one's gonna pay that.
Right.
At $800, or whatever the number is, it becomes much more palatable to the taxpayer. So any strategy that we can work on to, and I disagree with the statement that no one wants a $110 million building, because who wouldn't want a $110 million building? It's just how am I going to pay for it? How much does it cost me as a taxpayer? Right? We want the best for our students, we want the best for our children, we want the best amenities in town, but at what cost?
I never said I didn't want a building that size. I mean, I just bought a...
Maybe it wasn't you said it, Brian, but I mean...
Oh, he did.
It's a big number.
I mean, 2 years ago, I bought a car, and I had my eyes on a Porsche Boxster, and I bought a Honda Accord, because that's what I could do, you know? So I had my eyes on that Porsche Boxster, but yeah, a fair point. And if we're going at town meeting, if we're at the, well, we saved you the 150, but we added the 850, and it's messy. I mean, you can imagine that turning into 20 minutes of discussion at town meeting, just that little piece.
We could talk about debt coming off the books, we always do.
Yeah, it's just, what is the net effect to the taxpayer? Right, because they're gonna get their tax bill, and then the following quarter, they're gonna get the following tax bill.
They're gonna get a tax bill that's going up each year by the normal amounts. This is just showing the extra for this particular school.
You really want to show them this number, not what their tax bill is.
Yeah. So, the February 1st, we'll come up with something that shows the future, I guess.
Yeah, and that's what that day's
Bring
for.
a spreadsheet that's kind of interactive and just put it up on the screen and
Is there, do you
do what
have
ifs.
could you give us a calculation on for every $1 million saved, be it either we save the expense or we put the money aside and save it, how it affects the payment?
Sure.
Because we've talked about both. Is there a way to possibly reduce the expense of the building? Is there a way to set some money aside? And I think when we see it on paper as to what that might translate to, we can maybe accomplish both.
And you bring up a good point, we're still talking an estimated project cost. We don't know. It could be more, could be less. We just don't know at this point in time.
But the main dial is the square footage. If there was, a chunk that could be deferred or put in the add-on later, and, that reduces the immediate square footage with all kinds of implications that I'm not qualified even to be talking about. So I get that.
No, you end up with a high school gym that's too small. I think we have the smallest high school gym in the league in Massachusetts. So people don't even think, unless you're actually an athlete or you're in the gymnasium and you realize you have one side. You just don't want to end up in a position like that where you have somewhere, some way, there had to be a cuts made to say, let's trim 5 feet off of this gym because it sounds, we're X amount of square feet, all of a sudden.
It's a short court, and the player side, like your toes are almost in bounds.
Right, and so, just little things like that we got to be careful for when we're talking the square footage, but I know what you're saying. You try to cut, I think a lot of that's been done to some degree.
We have, there's still things we're looking at. I've recommended that we certainly don't have a traditional layout for a school because you have long hallways.
Yeah.
So the design that they've come up with 2 weeks ago have shortened the hallways and it allows for grade level neighborhoods. And the square footage is within 200 square feet of the long elongated hallways that only serve one purpose, and that's to have lockers and have kids, our students, transition from one class to another. So we're looking at every corner to try to save square footage.
I know you are, yeah.
Okay.
And everybody's in agreement that we should be adding that premium cost where we don't carry the risk of, help me with the terminology here, there's an option.
Project manager risk.
Yes.
CM risk, I guess.
Both boards are in agreement that we should purchase that.
I would.
Having done it with the library and the senior center.
It's been beneficial in the past every time. Yeah.
Okay.
So from what I've heard, if you purchase CM at risk, the chance of saving money is far greater than if you go on your own.
The chances of overruns is much less.
Much less, yes.
So,
And our decision, and Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, our decision still has to be approved by MSBA. We say we want to go CMA risk, we have to present it to MSBA and say, this is what we want to do, and they can say yes or no.
Yeah.
Even though they're not covering it. That's the control that they have over this process.
It's MBTA communities. Like MBTA communities.
Yeah.
Tell them we'll give them a little more control if they give us 70%.
True. And again, that's all I got.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you.
You got some of those meetings set up, right? When you set up, just including as well.
Okay.
I think there are a few that...
Which ones are we on?
For each one that together you are...
Okay, yeah. I have been... What's that? Yes. Yeah.
I felt joyously self-righteous at the dog hearing, so I kind of enjoyed that one more. Was that live? Whoops. Sorry. Sorry. That's how it felt.
Where is she?
I know. He was fighting us the whole time.
Hang in there. Yeah.
I know.
So we'll move on to public input.
Rob Rounds, 25 Juniper Road, so thank you. You've had quite the meeting already, and I thank you and thank everybody that's departing right now for all the stuff that you do. Having said that, I want you folks to be successful and all the folks that just left the room. And I can tell you that I've attended the 2 tours that were offered at the end of last year. I just attended the senior presentation held maybe a week ago. So maybe I was accompanied by about 60 or 70 residents, and that was it. And aspects, I've kind of been saying this for a couple of months. Steve referenced it earlier. I heard Stacy speak to it as well. Aspects of the do-nothing scenario in which we keep Littleton's kids and teachers and administrators in Shaker Lane School, to me, doesn't work. And so, as it's said, with regard to tripping over what's going to require, the, upgrading of that school, if that comes into Stacy, I think I heard her say 80 to 90 million, all on our dime, no MSBA. The focus has got to shift way before Maytown meeting. And you've got to get, Tim, you guys got to come up with a creative way to get this discussed, and you probably don't want to because you got a lot of other things. And that's unfortunate. But the do-nothing scenario that all the people, or many of the people, that I heard the 15 to 20 at the senior center, yeah, the 100 million? No. They're back to, goodness, I won't take your time. It's a killer, and you folks all know that. So you've got to change the equation to make everybody, including all those seniors, percolate on this beginning in May for 4, 5, 6 months to your vote town meeting to get them to understand if you do nothing, it's going to cost you a lot more. And if you don't change that equation, then we're busted. And everybody's going to be like some of our town meetings are going. Take 2 to 3 votes. Except you better convey what I've heard these guys say loud and clear. If you get off the track with regard to the funds when they're available right now, you go to the back of the line, and then our kids, our sufferers, and will suffer, all those teachers. And quite frankly, all the public that's going to say, why isn't anybody coming to Littleton anymore? I know you folks get it. I apologize for kind of begging you to do this, but I don't think you have many more months. If you don't get this out in front of everybody by that Maytown meeting, if you do it after, you're going to get the likes of the me. How many me's are out there? There aren't many. How many are watching? Not enough. How many more are out there that have already made up their minds because they've heard a whisper? It's $100 million. You got to change this, and you got to change it quick. You don't have much more time. It's amazing how time's moving along, but it's moving quickly. And I don't know what else to tell you other than you've got to give us the do-nothing scenario that really puts us on our heels that says one way or the other. Brian's points are all valid, except we're stuck. You're stuck. We all have to get out of this together, and if we don't get everybody focused on it, we're going to be at a bad place. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think some of that important messaging is more for the people that are in the seats voting. You know?
Yeah.
Good evening. Rob Houston, 55 Jennifer Street. I'm just here, I just heard something tonight that kind of caught me a little buzzword. And it was 3 initials, or 3 letters, TIF. I'm hoping that that's not the Lapoli project at 550 King Street is going to be coming back and asking for a TIF. Because that's not cool. And the reason it's not cool is I went on a tour with Sal Lapoli 5 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it was, when he first came to town. And I think he was putting, may have been back at the time he was putting the cranes up, or the tall things up. And I specifically had a conversation with him. I said, oh, you're going to want a TIF from the town, because everybody wants a TIF. This was on the back of the Patriot Beverage TIF. This was on the back of the, I mean, we give out TIFs like they're candy, it feels like. And he said, no, I don't do TIFs. I'm not going to ask for a TIF. So my question is, does he have TIFs in his other communities where he's built? And why do we need a TIF in this town? This project is huge, and it's going to make him money. That's what he's talked about. That's what his expertise is. Why do we have to subsidize that? And I'm going to be really unhappy if that tone doesn't change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, members update. You want to start, Karen?
Nothing.
Gary?
I had written some stuff down, but I just, I had mentioned it this morning, just to those of us that visited Robinson Road. I think most of us, I'll speak for the rest, and you can speak for yourself, but I was pleased. I think if you get a chance to see the work that Mr. Cataldo and his team did, the architects and the contractors, they just did a fantastic job of restoring that building and the compound itself. He did a lot of good work inside. Very modern look with that feel of looking, you go in there and you're just like, things aren't quite right, and they're not meant to be, because you've got old architecture in there and old beams and things that were rough cut, and they were taken from this house that burned down and from that ship and that. So it's a really neat architecture in there. And I wanted to thank Joe and his crew for putting together something that really looks beautiful from outside, and the inside looks even better. So, but we also learned a lot, I think, from that project. We had pinged some questions regarding some of these old houses or these developers that give us houses, and I'll use the Durkee farm as an example. There's a cost to that if we're going to have a developer of some kind try to restore a building to make it feasible, unless they have some huge pockets that just want to donate money to the town, which I don't know if we have that in Littleton. We talk about the Groton Music Center and things like that. Someone put a lot of money forward for that. The only way for it to be profitable is to allow some type of flexibility for other type of housing, whether it's condos in the back or something like that. So it was just eye-opening, talking about, when we got down to talking about the numbers and what it costs to do that project and why it wouldn't work for a developer unless you allowed a little bit more flexibility. So something to think about when we get some of these older buildings, quote unquote, given to us. There's a cost to it. So that's all I had.
The select board attended the town department head meeting this morning. It's always great to see all of those department heads. As usual, I was impressed with the professionalism and just the general level of extreme competence in the room. It was great to see, and makes me feel good about where the town's at.
A lot of new faces, too.
Yeah, and that too.
Yeah.
And everyone rowing in the same direction.
That is also, that was really heartening.
Yeah. It's a tribute to you, Jim. So,
Yep.
And Ryan.
Yep.
So I had a few things. I attended a meeting, MAPC Trail meeting down in Concord just before Christmas, where they were getting all of the communities in the area together to talk about what they need for a trail network, right? Connections to how to get more traffic into like the Bruce Freeman and the Minuteman, and the Assabet Trail and like how to develop feeder networks, and do people want wider trails and things like that. So it was very informative. And there's a lot of effort going on to make the trails longer and more branches off of the trails. So today I attended a meeting from the MMA talking about transportation grants, where they talked about, complete streets funding and mass trails grants and things. The meeting would have been great if it was held in November, because a lot of the grants they announced said, oh, those just closed, or they close next week. So, yeah, so that was good. I have been, as I mentioned before, I was attending through the Smart Growth for America Champions Institute about complete streets. The Smart Growth for America folks looked at our complete streets policy and had made recommendations on where it's weak and what should be updated. So I will be working with DPW and the BPAC and TAC to figure out, what we should do to update that. And DPW actually has started a updated prioritization plan for the complete streets that they're going to be working on with BPAC as well. We got mail recently that MassDOT is looking to put in level 3 chargers. The DC fast chargers probably at the point, so they're in the process of investigating that. And the Affordable Housing Trust is getting ready to announce the small grants program. Hopefully it will be opening around February 1st, where qualified homeowners can get up to $7,500 for home repairs for, age-in-place type repair. So that program is going to be administered through the COA with the Affordable Housing Trust approving it. We're working to get contractors excited about it and homeowners excited about it. So that should be coming very soon. So that's all I have. Any updates on the building projects you want to talk about?
Anything you want to say? Go ahead. Yeah, so let's see, Center Shattuck Street's coming along. Solar panels are up on the multipurpose room. Working on signage, donation tree, and the plaque, finalizing that. So that's coming along. We're also looking to close out steps as it relates to 31 Shattuck Street, and there'll be an appearance before the planning board, I think in March, to redraw the lines as well as to reconnect to the sewer system. 36 King Street is coming along. We were out there today with the architect, the OPM, and the build team. So we're looking to find ways to stabilize some unforeseen conditions, but we think we'll be able to find a way to get through that without too great an expense. So that's coming along, probably looking in the sort of May timeframe for opening on that, and March timeframe for the center of Shattuck Street.
The bid openings were Friday for the infrastructure for 550 King Street. They came in at the range anywhere from, I think it was 2.4 million to 4.7 million. There were 18 bidders, the most Ryan has experienced ever seen.
Is it everyone wants to work with Sal? I mean,
that's what it is. Well, those, that's exactly it. Yeah. We also have the permit was pulled for Yangtze River demo, so we should see that building being demolished in the very, very near future. There is also going to be temporary boards that are going to be erected that are going to be welcoming the first tenant to the IBM, and also depicting the future of what 550 is going to look like. We also have the permit has been issued, another permit issued to Northern Bank. That's over there, and they will be going vertical in the very, very near future, which is great. Yep. So I think that's it.
So at 5:50 at the planning board meeting last week, Sal's representatives were there. They expected the infrastructure work to start sometime in April. And they're planning in phase one having 300 apartments in 2 buildings being built and some of the retail space out front with that work starting somewhere towards the summer or fall. Also at the planning board meeting, before I forget, the planning board is talking about updating the marijuana bylaw to restrict the number of cultivation sites to 0, which they will be coming for us to put, they needed that to go on a ballot. So there will be something.
That's per town meeting.
It has to be both. Town meeting has to vote it and it's a
But
ballot.
we voted it already, so this.
No, we voted to restrict it to 1. So then they want to do it to 0, so no more. If sanctuary were ever to close, no new recreational grow facilities could come in. And there's 2 other types of grow facilities that we don't have any of. So they're going to be looking for us to put something on the May ballot for that. Also, that on a different note, the Shade Tree Committee may be coming and asking us to support a shade tree bylaw. They're working with town council, I think, to get something finalized. So basically, if you cut down, certain size trees, you have to replace them with others, and it's to save an effort to save more trees in town. So, I think you were working with them at some point on that. So.
Yep.
So, okay.
Would you like to tell them about Friday's debut?
Friday's debut. Oh, yeah. We're going to do the first podcast recording on Friday. So.
We can call in live.
You can call in live as much as you want.
We won't be answering.
Right.
Okay. Moving on then. Select board updates. Norchard update. Do you want to?
Yeah. Mark and I met with John Bransfield and went over the lease that we had used for Stormalong, and then went back and forth with Jenny a couple times, and I think we have a lease that is basically complete. There were basically some very minor updates to it. We removed a couple clauses, one of which was put in specifically for Stormalong. I don't think any of the changes were substantive, and I'm happy to circulate that. We do have a couple things. One is that John wants to lease the lower barn and the cottage in addition to the upper barn. He did go through the upper barn with Eric and felt as though it was in excellent condition and didn't need any major upgrades. He thought that the siding was a problem and the windows, but he didn't see any significant problems. So there are 2 things that are in the domain of this board. The first one is he may want to transfer ownership of the lease to another LLC just for insurance purposes. And that is included in the lease. There is language in the lease that allows him to do that, but it requires the select board approval. I told him that I would bring it to you. I don't assume that there would be any objection to that. It's literally like a paperwork change. The other one is that he asked to sublet for the first few years, I think, one small portion of the upper fields to a nursery, which does outdoor potted plants, and they basically bring them in, cultivate them for the spring, and then sell them off in the summer. Again, he has the right to sublet, but it would require approval of the board in order to let him do that. He explained it as a really good way for him to generate cash flow early on when the rest of the property is being rehabbed. So I'm going to bring those both to this board because unless I hear objections, we could add language to the lease that would give him absolute right to do those things, but I would prefer to keep those in our hands. But I think he wants some assurances that this board is not going to object to him doing either of those things.
So is the idea with the sublet that it'll be open to the public?
No.
Just that that's where they're growing.
He's literally subletting to a company that does this work. So they bring in plants, they cultivate them, they send them back out.
Okay.
I mean, as long as the same restrictions apply.
Yeah, it's
That's the most
APR,
important.
it's all has to be under the APR.
It sounds like the same
It's similar to what
plan
he
as to
does.
what he does,
Well,
just
he- so
different
he does
plans?
more-
He does trees?
He does more growing, longer-term growing on the site.
Mhm.
And I should add, I've been very impressed with his approach. He sent us a management plan, which I will also distribute, but a lot of what he does is really interesting coppice work and native trees, and he's very interested in the sort of local ecosystem of that land, and maintaining it without using, with using as little herbicides, pesticides as possible. And he's strictly native, so he's going to spend a lot of time and effort on getting rid of invasives and rehabbing the place with windrows and all kinds of stuff. The last thing is something that Mark and I discussed, which is we want to determine for rent some way of capturing some of the money that the town might have to spend on the property. And so, Mark, as an example, said, well, if it's a 20-year lease and we know that we're going to spend, $100,000 on upgrades, we need to amortize that over the course of the 20 years and charge them that for rent. So right now we have, I think it's a 10-year term with 5-year renewals.
He asked for 20 years, I think, and we...
That's right.
Yeah.
A 20-year term and 2 5-year renewals. So I don't necessarily know that we have a figure for that work. He has not asked us for anything. He has not asked us to remove trees. He has not asked us for substantial upgrades to the barn. So I'm not sure how to capture that number and how to, to quantify that.
So you're looking at a number, and probably not, you would hope you could cover the cost at the end of this. If after 20 years he said bye-bye and we were stuck in the same situation.
Right.
Obviously it wouldn't be the same because there's some protections in there on what the property.
Well, the idea is if we lease the property to him, let's say we're leasing the barn to him for property taxes, right? And we have to put a new roof on the barn and it costs us $50,000, $100,000, whatever the roof would cost. We have no source of funds for that.
Right.
So the taxpayer shouldn't necessarily be on the hook to cover a barn roof for something that he's using.
Yeah.
If we can basically, not that we are trying to make money off of the property, we're just trying not to lose money on them.
Well, and then Ryan and Jimmy, you guys have what it's cost us since it's been dormant to maintain the property. That's the other piece of this, right? Keep it from overgrowing.
Yeah, I don't think that, I think what Mark's referring to is
the structures.
The structures, right. The money we've already sunk into the project is...
Personnel hours and return.
Yeah, but we're not going to capture that. I think it's just trying to, I think the point you're making is if it's a number.
A capital improvement,
Yeah, right,
essentially.
and that you amortize over the course of the duration.
So ideally, of course, we'd find the cost and then, try to amortize it after we spend it, right? So that he doesn't get stuck in a position of paying us money he doesn't need to pay us.
Yeah, we need to talk on this more, I think.
Okay.
On the side.
Okay. So let's talk on the side, but I want to get the lease to him. Sorry?
We just do prevailing wage.
Oh, no, I understand that. Yeah, no, that would be, obviously, yeah.
So one suggestion I have is we send Eric out there and ask him to go through the buildings and say he thinks that the roof on the building is going to need to be replaced in 10 years, and it would cost X, and the windows are going to be replaced in 5 years, and it's going to cost Y, and we can come up with a 20-year plan of what, we think is going to need to be replaced when, and at approximately what cost, and then we can say, okay, we add all those up, divide by 20 years, that's what we're expecting, or we can divide, we can inflation them out too, right?
Yeah.
So.
Won't he be seeking assurances that we'll actually do those things then?
Well, I think we have to do them. I think they're part of our.
Our obligations under the terms of the lease to maintain the property.
Sure, but there's a big difference between what we actually have to do when the time comes versus what we expect we'll have to do today in 10 or 20 years.
Understood. And on the other hand, we don't know what costs will be. We don't know whether these things are going to go when Eric says they're going to go. So I guess it could fail in either direction.
That's true.
And so we're just making our best guess and our, doing a good faith estimate, I guess is what it comes down to.
I mean, if you put something in there that, the guarantee to him, so to speak, would be, if you said something like 75% of this will go back into the property for improvements in existing structures and things like that, the 25% of it will go to what you were talking about after 20 years. We might have to do some work to get the next lessee in there. If that's worst case scenario, I guess. What's the break and the lease break? What happens?
Oh, it's the same termination that we had before, which is, either party can terminate for cause at, with 60 days notice or something like that. Or maybe it's longer, maybe it's 90 days, I don't remember. I can send you the
That's probably
lease.
mass law.
Yeah, something like that.
We'll send her on the lease.
Yeah, I'll distribute it as it stands now.
And we were prohibited from doing anything that, like right of first refusal,
Correct.
we couldn't do anything like
Yeah, we
that.
have to do an RFP if we're going to sell anything.
Okay.
So those two structures will be built into the same lease?
Ideally, yeah.
Probably
I think the cottage too, so 3 structures.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
No, it's good.
That's good news, because those buildings were just...
It seems like a good outcome. So.
Yeah.
That solves our issue with conservation, that one of the hang-ups I had was that piece of land.
The lower barn.
Right, it was just going to sit there, and conservation wants the lower piece, but not that. No, well, thanks. Now we've got a use for it, at least, it sounds like.
Right.
So I've also reached out to the water department, and they are interested in a piece of that property.
Right, we knew that.
Right.
That was the other.
So, and they think they can work with the Conscom piece, so that'll more come out next week, or at our next meeting.
That was the other
Conscom is here.
concern, yeah.
So.
That's good news.
Real quick,
Do we have a-
Rob Houston, 55 Dennison Street. Can I just ask a question? I might have an idea, and I just wanted to ask a question. You're hamstrung because you're undertaking the obligation in the lease to repair the building, right? The roof or the siding. There's no legal requirement that that be the case. That's a negotiated business term.
I think since the town owns those buildings.
I own a house, I can lease.
No, but because we're a municipality, we're constrained more by mass law than you are constrained by mass law, because you're not a municipality.
So I just want to confirm that, right? So that would be my only question, because if you're actually honest and upfront with them, which it sounds like you are, that says, look, John, or whatever, we're going to have to put a roof on in 20 years. We know that. It's a 5-10-year roof. We're going to have to put it on. We want to start collecting enough money to replace the roof. And he knows that's what you're collecting it for, but he's concerned you may not do it. Then just say, why don't you pay for it? I'm just trying to understand. As long as, if we can't do that, fine. It was just...
So you're talking about a triple net lease?
Unless he never did it.
No, it's really more just the capital repair, the capital
It's triple net.
replacement obligation. But fine. Triple net is operating costs, taxes, and insurance, right? But
And maintenance.
yeah, I'm simply talking about the capital repair. We'll call it the roof, because that's what we're
So
talking
it's
about.
like, so we're constrained by the bid process and RFPs.
Which is why we don't want to undertake.
Well, so I guess I would defer to Ryan if he
Maybe we
knows
can't do
whether or
it.
not.
I mean, he
Put the
can't.
obligation on him to repair or
Right,
replace the roof.
I understand what you're asking.
Isn't that the problem that we had with the last guy, though? Is that he was supposed to make all the capital improvements, and there was no incentive for him to make any capital improvements, so.
Right. Yeah, we could potentially do it that way, but then if the roof was failing and there's nothing that says he's going to take care of it.
This takes it out of lessee's hands, because you're right, that's an example.
He
of
also has no incentive to do it, yeah.
Why do I want to replace the roof?
I don't own the building.
Yeah, that's a different problem. That's
Right.
collateral.
Yeah.
Big enough security deposit, whatever. If you can calculate it, all the better. Okay. I was just curious. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello.
I'm gonna sit.
Who are you again?
Kristen Kazokis, 6 Cottage Way. Let's see, I have lots of things to say. First, I just wanted to thank you for this process. And I would like to say, please do not sign this lease with John Bransfield. We have the opportunity to bring back the Neshoba Praying Indians to our community through this property. They, from the very beginning, before you even put out your RFI, after Stormalong fell through, came to the town and said, we would like to take care of this land. We would like to be here. Then, going through all the processes, they said, we'd like to buy the land. We'd like to lease the land. We'd like to be a part of this property and this community. And in the process of selecting who you wanted to negotiate a lease, from the meeting, I heard, oh, they're just dreaming, that they don't have a management plan, and what they proposed, we don't know if it will meet MDR's requirement of, getting things going to take care of this land. Well, John Bransfield just provided his management plan to you right now. He didn't have a management plan when you guys selected him. He hasn't done this work before, so he's dreaming. And now he's bringing in other people that we're not able to vet. We're just going to allow him to choose, or is this process in our approval, are we going to be vetting them? And I just believe that the APR, as much as I appreciate it, there's only a certain percentage of the land that's in APR that has to be used for farming. That other parcels of the land can be used for other things. And do we have a clear idea of what that's going to be when John Bransfield is taking care of the land? I believe that the philosophy, the approach to land care, their relationship to land, their relationship to community, that the Neshoba will benefit Littleton, not only now, but in the long run. They're not looking to be here just for 20 years. They have an vested interest in this land because it's their ancestral land, and there's that connection. And I don't think that the board has given the town the opportunity to realize that that is a possibility. I keep hearing that even if the town wanted it, there's no clear way for that to happen. Well, I don't think that that's been investigated. I've heard, oh, they don't have a management plan, or they don't know how to farm. I don't think that's the case at all. And that people are saying things to be fact when they're not true. There's been prejudice against them from the very beginning with the Orchard Working Group. And I just think that you're
That's a pretty
overlooking.
harsh statement. I mean,
Well, I can prove it to you. I was there when they were said. And Amy Tower Lewis, she and I have had conversations about this. And it was in the very beginning that, so anyways, there were requirements in saying that they should be attending the meetings, and where other things that they were requiring from them, they weren't requiring from other people that were doing the proposals. So I think that there's also, you said that you'll need to do an RFP to do a sale, but what about a transfer of land ownership? Can you do a transfer of land ownership to John Bransfield? Are you guys looking to eventually sell this to him by saying, hey, to the town, look, we've got this great lease, we've got this great person, then are you going to go to the town and then say, let's sell it to him? And then my other question is, what's the land going to look like? What are the trees going to look like in 20 years if John decides he doesn't want to do this anymore? And how is he going to be meeting the MDR's requirement to be farming that land in 2 years? Is that why he's bringing in a leasee, because he himself can't do that?
Well, no, he's doing it because the property as it stands now is going to require a tremendous amount of work to get it ready to do any kind of agriculture that isn't orchards. So the apple trees will need to be cut down, the invasives will need to be removed, And he is going to be essentially doing all of this maintenance work and not having any income until he can get the property to the point where he can do his tree work. So for the first few years, he needs an additional revenue stream to help him, make it a going concern. And he has another full property, I think it's in Stowe, so he's going to be using, I believe, his business, his existing business, to put money into this property in order to rehab it.
So, I guess my question then too is one of the things that you guys had a critique about the Neshoba Prairie Indians proposal was that it was going to take a while for them to start farming. This is the same thing with John Bransfield.
I didn't object to, I didn't have that specific objection to their proposal.
I didn't say that you specifically. Yeah. During the Orchard Working Group, when you guys were evaluating, that was one of the things that was brought up, and I kept hearing that they didn't have a management plan, and so I'm just really thoughtful that, first off, that the process in which this happened wasn't a fair and legal process, because of how things were evaluated. And then now it's, where does it say in John Bransfield's proposal that he's going to be cutting down trees? Is all that written in the lease as to what he will be doing within the 20 years, so that we know in 20 years what that property is going to look like in terms of the land and the trees, and who's going to be making sure he's doing all of this? Is the town, who's managing, oversighting John Bransfield? Are we hiring somebody? Is there a committee? Because that was the issue that we had with our last, we didn't have
So I
any.
have talked to the AgCom, and they are willing to be the intermediary or oversee this more between the select board and the tree company. Having more of the agricultural expertise, they can do a better job of evaluating his proposals what he's doing agriculturally than the select board necessarily can, and it's part of their charter kind of. So,
is there going to be any conservation consideration in that evaluation?
Conservation from what perspective?
For the care of the land. And making, and any considerations for the fact that our APR land is surrounded by land that the people of the Littleton have decided that we want preserved and cared for, and we want for animals to live. So does the agricultural committee have the same type of awareness and understanding about land care for sustainability? Or is it just agriculture? I know that
I don't know that the farmers are going and trying to strip the land. I mean, they're making a business out of they have to care enough to preserve what they're doing. I think, yes.
Then why do we have conservation laws?
So this is under APR. It has to be farmed, right? And you're right, there's a certain percentage of it has to be farmed, but that doesn't mean that the rest of the land they can use for anything they want. They're not going to build houses on the other APR land. They can't, there's restrictions on what they can do on the other, on whatever isn't actively farmed, still, even with the APR. I'm not sure what you're trying to get at for the conservation portion of it there.
Well, let's rodicides, all right? Let's put those out. MDR is fine with using second generation roticide, or the rodicides where they kill the mice and then the hawks and the eagles eat it, the fox eat it, and then they get poisoned. So according to APR, MDR, those are okay to use. Are we okay that those are going to be used next to our Sarah Doublet Forest, next to Lake Nagog or Nagog Pond, where the bald eagles are there?
One of the reasons that I think John's plan is a good one is that he's not interested in using that kind of stuff. That his approach to the land is kind of holistic and involves native species, that it created a sort of its own ecosystem that's appropriate for the climate that we're in, and that he doesn't need to use a lot of herbicides, pesticides, or any other chemicals in order to control the way that you would have to spray arsenic on the apple trees, for example.
I wasn't talking specifically about that John's going to be doing that. My point is that farming, from some points of view, don't take into consideration folks from a environmental component and conservation component. And the APR agreement has that conservation component in it. So why isn't our conservation interests in town being represented in the oversight of this lease?
So there are people from the Conservation Commission on the Ag Commission, and I would hope that they're represented, and that anyone that goes to the ag meetings when they're talking about this can represent their position as well. So.
And you folks are all okay with losing the opportunity for the cultural heritage of the Neshoba?
So I think we need to make one thing clear. The Neshoba's proposal was for lease to own.
Well,
that was their proposal, was for lease to own. There's
because
not a
that
whole
was
lot
the only opportunity that they were given. They weren't, they...
No, it was, they
No, we
had...
put out an RFP for lease.
For lease, and they proposed a lease to own agreement. They didn't propose to have a straight lease arrangement. So it's not comparing even playing fields in terms of the commitment that's required from the town.
So why wasn't there, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I mean, they went outside so the lease, the RFI, or the RFP, asked for lease terms. And they said, we want to lease to own. My understanding is that we can't even offer lease to own legally. So I respect everything you're saying, but, to say that we didn't take them, that it was because of something the Orchard Working Group said, their proposal didn't propose lease terms that were acceptable to the town.
I didn't realize in anybody's submission for the RFP that they were actually submitting terms for a lease. Weren't they?
No.
I mean, in terms of what they wanted out of the lease. I mean, if you look at John Bransfield's 3 pages, he just kind of gives an oversight of a proposed idea of what he'd like to do.
With a lease to own arrangement, the Neshoba Praying Indians are prepared to invest the funds necessary to renovate the farmhouse. With a lease to own arrangement, the Neshoba Praying Indians are prepared to invest the funds necessary to renovate the secondary barn. With a lease to own arrangement, the Neshoba Praying Indians are prepared to invest the funds necessary to install sheds and animal shelters. The whole proposal was contingent on a lease to own arrangement, which we can't offer.
So I guess my question is then why were they a part of the original selection and evaluation?
Because they were one of the 3 respondents that submitted a valid RFP.
Okay, and so then why wasn't there the question back? I think there was the whole conversation of would they be willing to lease? This was the whole thing that you did with John Bransfield. In his proposal, he wanted to buy the barn and the house, and you at that point, that wasn't something that you could do, but yet you engaged with the conversation with him.
We had a
that.
meeting,
Did you
I don't
engage
know,
the
a while ago.
conversation?
I'd like to get this moving on. I'm getting late.
Yeah. But
we had the meeting. The 4 remaining members of the Orchard Working Group, which Matthew and I were 2 of, had a meeting where we evaluated all the proposals. We scored them all, and the Bransfield proposal came out scoring the highest based on those proposals. We said at that meeting, we said, we don't know if this proposal will go forward because he also proposed that he wanted to buy the house and the barn. When we approached him, we said, we will not sell you the house or the barn. We cannot do that under this. Are you willing to go forward? He said, absolutely, and that's where this has been going forward. We scored all of the proposals. The Praying Indians did not score the highest. So we went with the one that was scored the highest. And, I mean,
Well, and I got to say, like, we absolutely, it was a level playing field. When I evaluated those three things, I absolutely looked at the same criteria for all three of them and determined in my, I mean, well, yeah, it's subjective, but there was no, like, you know, it was a completely, the criteria was identical for all three. And, you know, and John Bransfield's was the best one of the three.
From your opinion?
Yeah, well, I mean, but there were four of us, and...
It was the consensus
It was the consensus of our...
That's what you're charged with doing, so.
Well, back to the question of what is the land going to look like, because he talked about planting windrows of hedges to create fences so that the farm and his farm activity would be blocked from the public. So if he decides to leave the property in 20 years and he wants, because, you know, things have changed in his life and he doesn't want to do this anymore, what is he, is there something in the lease about, are we just going to accept the property for the changes that he's made and then maintain those and try and find another leasee?
Any leasee who uses it for agriculture, we have minimal control over what they can do once we lease it to them. If they're within the bounds of the APR, there could be a lot of things that they do to the land. And at the end of 20 years, you know, I think any of the leasees could change the, you know, the character of that land in ways that we can't anticipate.
And I think the importance at town meeting was the public did not want to sell the property.
By 3 votes.
But
Yeah,
we, you know, people are elected.
And so I guess my only
So-
thing is one of the reasons why that there was the vote and there was the push from the Orchard Working Group was because of the oversight of the town in the care of the land, and then also the cost of the care of the land. And so then here's the question of, if he decides to leave in 20 years, are we going to the cost of caring for that land going to be increased by the work that he's done? And is that something that...
Who knows?
I
It's
mean,
20 years, I mean...
It could be, but I don't know that any other lessee we would have a different outcome with.
I mean, the important thing to me was to keep the land, and I was probably the biggest proponent of wanting to lease it as opposed to sell. And that, regardless what happens to that land, and that's a big statement, it's a beautiful property. If you just let trees grow there, it would be a beautiful property. If it was just fields, it would be a beautiful property. So that was more important to me, to have some control, the town to have control like that. I could say if you put a farm in there and he just raised cattle and it just became a big sloppy mud thing, what would that leave us after 20 years? You know, so
Well, there's a difference between doing something that's annual and that can be repaired versus planting perennial existing. And so I think that's one of the differences, that if you were going to turn it into hay fields, then that could be remediated into something else in terms of the cost of our care of the land in 20 years if it turns into hay fields. If you're going to be doing annual agricultural crops, then you've got a parcel of land that can easily be turned into something else or can be turned into hay fields. But if you're...
Yeah, but by that same logic, we have a parcel that's been an orchard, and we're looking at the cost of turning it into something else, and it's outrageously high, so...
Not to mention that all of his trees are in pots. He's not permanently planting anything.
So we have committed, and he is committed to having, you know, if we're close to signing on the dotted line, he will have a meeting where you can come and anyone can come and throw out all your questions to him, and we'll see what his answers are. And maybe, based on his responses, we'll change our mind about signing the lease. We'll do it before we sign the lease.
Okay, that's one of the things, because...
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just going to put on record that I believe in Neshoba. The other thing I should say as well is that I've resigned from the Littleton Conservation Trust, so I'm no longer connected with them. So as I'm speaking, just take that into consideration. I just want to make that clear. Okay. Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it.
Rob Brown's 25 Juniper. I'm glad to have just heard that you're holding the public meeting, because that was my first question. I hadn't heard anything. Second question is, if I heard new management plan's been received, I think I saw on your action agenda for tonight consideration of dismissing the ad hoc working group, which I began interest in this after the last May meeting. I went to school, I watched, I listened, I learned. I benefited greatly from many of the members, some of which have since resigned. My question is there anything from your perspectives in that management plan that Will and Sarah, the two remaining members on the working group, that you think would be like, uh-oh, that sort of thing? And I don't know, I'm fishing here. What I'm trying to pass along is when I saw on the agenda the dismissal of that group, that felt like, to me, a resident a takeaway, because I benefited from the education process that I went through to learn what they and Karen and others had accumulated over that time. So I know that they can come as participants in the meeting, as you're saying, is going forward. I guess that's okay. I think the residents would benefit, or at least people like me who found value in them would benefit if information that you're able to share could be shared. So if there are questions, much like Kristen's bringing in questions, I'd love to know the answers if they have such concerns. If they don't, they don't. Trust you two. I'm just trying to say how there's 4 eyes might be better than 2, that sort of thing.
I think we can offline share the management plan with the working group, the existing working group members, and they can give feedback directly to Matthew and I. The point of dissolving the working group is there really is nothing for them to do at this point, and if there was something to do, we would have to add members or reconstitute it anyway.
Yeah,
but I don't know if we can share the management plan with the public. I don't know if there's information in there that would be proprietary. We should double check if there is, or what the condition is for that, and see what we can share. But we'll definitely share it with the other members of the working group and get their feedback.
That's very responsive, so thank you.
So it may not become public.
Okay, that's very responsive. Previously, the questions, I think the town just came to some agreement with regards to some abutter's property with regard to some work. Will the execution of this lease that's proposed lead to not having those sorts of issues, or are there other remedies such that there's still
I think that was a one-off. I don't think that that's going to happen again.
And again, I apologize, I don't know that's how you're providing the information. Last one for me is, I think Linda, Historical Commission, is considering, a restriction. Is there anything to prevent that from happening, or what are the plans with regard to that?
We have been very remiss in speaking with her about it, and I'm going to try to catch up with her soon.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so having beat the orchard to death, do we want to talk about the ad hoc working group?
Do you have any questions? Because we just described the reason why we're disbanding.
Yeah, I read,
like we did, the charge was completed.
The working group hasn't met since October.
Yeah.
And there's really nothing for them to do at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that the charge of the committee had changed, obviously, since town vote. And with the expectation you would come out of this with a lessee, and that was really the end of the charge.
Okay.
The select board should be able to take it from here, and then put it back into the town's hands. I'm excited that the town's keeping it. I will outwardly say I know it wasn't popular probably at that time, but just being able to keep the property in the hands of the town, I think for generations to come is more important to me than not everything, but I think it's to have some control over that property going forward. I think is a huge benefit to the community, and who knows, 20 years from now, I do worry, obviously, what a property can look like, but I also look at the possibilities in 20 years with, I don't know, a new board, a new town, whatever we have going on. All of a sudden now there's someone that wants to do something amazing there and put in something that's going to maybe benefit the community greatly. Who knows?
A water park?
Cider.
No, but, yeah, something more in tune with some of the other communities that someone has some money that wanted to invest a lot of energy into, so.
The Wilson Aquatic Center.
It allows more, it just allows that possibility years from now. We won't enjoy it probably, but.
Okay.
Do you have any input on that?
So as far as the working group goes, no, I think it probably, it's a good time to dissolve it, it's my opinion.
I'm ready to move forward.
Move that the select board vote to disband the Nagog Hill Orchard Ad Hoc Working Group.
Second.
Moved by Matthew, second by Karen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Goodbye.
Charter Committee. So it's been posted, it's been advertised.
Correct. Now the decision has to be made amongst the select board how you would like to vet the applications that are coming in. That will be here this January.
It's February 3rd.
No, there'll be deadline, they'll be here January.
Yeah, so the deadline for the applications.
January
are,
27th,
Wednesday, January 29th at noon, and then the interviews would take place on Monday, February 3rd.
So do we have to, is there a reason, I mean, it's late, do we have to make a decision tonight, or can we postpone this for our next meeting? Is there a reason to make a decision on it tonight, or wait and see how many applications we have in, or have a better feel for it? And
Considering it's, it's very generic of the process that's up there, so that's fine if you want to wait.
Good, yeah, let's postpone that one.
Okay.
I think it'll depend, if we
Just
get a lot
continue.
of applications, it'll be different than if we get a handful. Like, I think that might change the way we want to handle it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so it will be continued.
the IMA,
The IMA, it's an intermunicipal agreement between the towns of Sudbury, Acton, and Littleton for regional dispatch services for the senior transportation services. It is something that we have been in an ongoing relationship with. This is just memorializing the previous IMA that had expired. So just renewing it with a higher price tag.
So by moving that are we voting to have you approve the IMA?
Yes, please.
Actually, it's...
Oh, no, I'm sorry,
It's
the
the board.
five of you.
The board has to sign off on it.
Oh, okay. So do we need a motion, or, oh, yeah, okay.
Yes.
Any comments? I'm sorry.
I'm not fully familiar with this service. I mean...
Yeah, it's a dispatch service that seniors, that the three communities, we share it, and it's based upon the percentage. So we have, Acton has got the greater percentage.
Yep.
Sudbury has the least, and us. So it's to provide them with transportation.
So this is just specific to seniors?
Correct.
Not like the MART?
Not the MART, no.
Anyone, okay.
No.
Got you, thank you.
So this has exact dollar amounts, so this isn't expected to go up every year? This cost is fixed for 3 years?
Yes, it is.
It's not going to change?
That is correct.
Okay.
That's the way it was written.
Okay.
Move that the select board vote to enter into an intermunicipal agreement for regional dispatch services with Acton and Sudbury for senior transportation services.
Second.
Moved by Matthew, second by Karen. All those in favor?
Aye.
And this was vetted by town council, just so that everyone knows.
Minutes. I had one correction on in the organization pledge, item number 5. It says EHS donated to the TRED Fund from the Eunice B. Morrison Charitable Foundation, 2,000K. So it should either be 2,000 or 2K.
That's a big donation. Is that $2 million?
Other than that, I didn't see anything.
Move that the select board vote to approve the meeting minutes from the select board meeting on December 16th, 2024.
As amended.
As amended.
Second.
Moved by Matthew, second by Karen. All those in favor?
Aye. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Matthew, second by Karen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Littleton.
Peace out.